internet.
Yeah.
You know, like,
well, there was a guy at the coffee shop who I walked in and I was like, oh, I guess somebody else is playing with him. And then I'm watching and he has like 2 guitars. He has a guitar, a bass, and a acoustic.
Oh, yeah.
And he loop pedals everything.
That's Sam Young.
Really good.
Yeah, he's brother of one of the owners, and he's phenomenal.
Yeah.
He's been playing guitar, I mean, longer than I have. I've known him since 2007, so he was a young lad then. And yeah, I knew him when he first started playing guitar, and it was just, he was so diligent and wanted to learn, and not just learn, but like learn to do it right. And this is something where like, I am probably the farthest thing from a perfectionist. So when I like meet somebody like him who's just like, I'm going to sit and I'm going to learn every scale, I'm going to learn what the difference between this size string and what this size string, what all this actually means, like the techniques and the technology behind his instruments and stuff. And that's why he can do something amazing like that, is because
he's awesome.
Yeah, he put the hours in.
The cool thing about the coffee shop too is it's one of the only venues now where if you could be a Billy Trey and you're not 21 and it's a hard time to play in bars, but if you pick up your acoustic and you want to get some chops and just get some, you can go to the coffee shop. You could be a musician who's 16 years old and get your first couple chops singing in a place.
Yeah, I mean, like that's the dream, right? Like to just be able to provide a place for kids to just come out and practice what they're passionate about.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, we played at the Roller Roost, and that was like the spot that we had there, and that was great for what it was. I mean, that was a phenomenal venue, just, I mean, insofar as for what it was. And hopefully, I mean, I do I book like half of the shows there, and that's something I'm always looking for, is just like, who isn't playing out, who doesn't want to play bars. You can come here, because playing the bars is hard, man, especially for acoustic people, because no one cares about me. Like, I'm just like fun background music, and that's understandable, because you go to see somebody like Look Alive or Montungo and they're just blasting you with energy. Whereas like me, like I can do that on some level, but like if I just had a drummer behind me, it would be a thousand different.
It's a different delivery. Yeah, it's a different delivery. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like, you have like the boys upstairs who are an acoustic, but they bring a band energy. They go out there and do something crazy.
Yeah, those guys are phenomenal. How they can just, I mean, they're all super talented.
Yeah,
that's why Tom Zalega is a really good buddy of mine. He got me one of my first shows around the area when I moved back, and I love talking with him. I can't even remember when this was, but I was coming home from work one night. This was before the coffee shop was open, and I was like late at night, and I went down to Roma to get some pizza, and I bumped into Tom on the street, and he's like, well, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I just got off work. He's like, well, come in for a beer. So I went into the Eagle up on 2nd Street in Pottsville.
Oh, yeah, I love that place.
Yeah, and so we had a beer, and then next thing I knew, it was midnight, and he's like, all right, we got 2 more bars to go to before we're going home. I'm like, all right, let's do this. And yeah, I mean, he treated me the whole time. We had a great time talking about the importance of a set list that flows properly, and like the importance of performing.
I love Tom to death.
Yeah, he's amazing.
One of my best friends. He was a great addition to the boys, and he can go do his own thing. And his songs he covers are songs that you don't hear covered very often.
Yeah, I mean, he has this, and
his originals are good too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, he has this song called Maker's Mark.
Yep, awesome song.
Yeah. And I'm just like, that's one of the things, like when we were talking off mic about how I don't think any of my songs are good or anything like that. Especially when I hear a song like that, I'm just like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yep, there goes, I understand why because I'm one of those singer-songwriters who will be like, I started this song today and I need to finish it today. And it's not a good practice, because I'll get tired and I'll be like, you can just kind of like fluff the last verse or whatever, it doesn't really matter. Like, and that's not a good way to go about songwriting.
You can tell when you're listening to a song too, and they do that. Like, all right, I'm really about the first verse. I really like my chorus, and then I just need some filler to fill it. Yeah,
and that's I'm like super conflicted at the moment songwriting, because a lot of my older stuff was very traditional folk style, in the sense of just 3 lines and then a refrain or something like that. Just something that repeated itself. Not really, I didn't do choruses much. And I want to get back there, but I also find myself wanting to do things that are a little bit more, I don't know, like time changing, or just going from finger picking to strumming more, just change it up. But I'm having the hardest time trying to lay that old structure on top of these things. But the fun thing about songwriting is, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, and you can make it your own. All right, well, we'll probably use a lot of that for the intro.
Sure,
I think that's a good intro. So hey everyone, this is Anthony with Interviews with Everyday People. This is episode 28, I believe.
That's exciting.
28. Here with Timothy Mengle, right? Am I saying that right? From you may know him as Timothy Mengle, or from Churches and Trains. That's how I first met you. Playing a show at Goodfellas. That was interesting. I had Montongo Look Alive boys on, and I'm like, man, who would be somebody fun to interview in the area? And they're all like, you got to get with Tim. And like, yeah, they get him on, and then we kind of start talking, and here we are. We finally got it together.
That's a lot of pressure. Yeah. I love those guys though. They're like, I don't know. I'm probably a decent bit older than most of them. And by decent, I mean like 4, 5, 6 years, something like that.
I'm older than everybody. I'm always like
how old are you?
I'm 32.
I'm 29.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I see in them, or they give me like, they renew that vigor within me to like be about this life and just to go out there and have a fun time. I mean, we always joke that the Montongo guys are your typical pop punk dudes.
Yeah.
And that's great. I love having that energy. We've had them. I don't know if you've heard about my barn shows. I know I talked to you about that.
You're doing one this weekend?
Yep, on the 6th.
What time does it start?
It starts at 6. So
6
at
night?
the 6th. Yeah.
Okay.
And there's a Facebook event for that. But yeah, I've had them play a bunch, and they're always like just such a fun time. They're always like, wherever they play, they pack out the house. So that's why we had them as the first show press, because it's like we know we're gonna have a decent turnout. Yeah, and I was exactly right.
Yeah, 100%. That's why I booked them on Skookstock. I started getting back in the music scene, and like I said, I attribute a lot of my connections and meeting people because I hung out with the boys upstairs for a long time. And then I was like, all right, I kind of wanted to start doing this, and I told them like, hey, I want to kind of do my own thing. Like it's fun hanging out at the shows and carrying the stuff in, and every now and then going up and rapping or singing and being an idiot. But I need something for me. I need something that I can make my own. Yep. So I started going to see other bands and start doing the podcast thing. But I was like, if I wanted them to play Skookstock, but Steve's going to be a papa that day. Yeah. So he's like, I can't risk going to play if I get a phone call, which is completely understandable. That's always next year. But I was like, oh man, I gotta have Montongo. I had to have Look Alive, Japan. Like the six bands I picked are like, I just feel like every time you go see them, it's high energy and they're a great time. Yeah, absolutely. I love playing with all those guys. I'm trying to think. I know when Brett was on here, he told a story about when we first met. I was a young emo kid, and we met at some music shop or whatever. So like, I've known a lot of those guys for a long time. I've been a part of this scene since I was like 13. That was when I was in my first band, and so it's just like we were talking about off mic, of just seeing so many super talented people in this area. It's like, because I've traveled a bit, and a lot of the places I go, I don't see this same just raw talent. Like, okay, so there was this one time I went to an open mic in Iowa City, and it was terrible. Like, everyone was bad, and I don't say that because like I've played 1,000 shows that have been terrible, and I've probably played 1,001 shows. Maybe you went to that one night where everyone just had their worst night of their lives.
So I always thought that maybe it was because there's just nothing here, that there's people just sit around and become creative because of nothing else going on, or they become alcoholics or drug addicts.
That was my theory too. I forget what show I said it on, but like, this area has a clear path. If you stay positive, motivated, and have a clear direction, the world is yours, because determination goes you very far. Goes very far in this area. Like, I have a lot of respect for a lot of these business owners in our area, because a lot of these business owners, yes, they might have started somewhere, but they've worked hard to maintain and keep it going. Like you look at like, you know, the Murphy's and Sophia's Jewelers, like they've been a name in our area forever.
That's a jewelry store, you know, and that's an expensive, that's a hard thing to keep going.
You have these business owners that do the restaurants, like you have Savis, who literally in a short amount of time went from a bar manager of Strikers to now he's going to be owning his second restaurant. Yeah, the hard work pays off.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
you know what I mean?
That's okay. So I'm very, very good friends with one of the owners of Prest. Her name's Abby Weaver, and
her family. Hard worker.
Like, absolutely. Every one of them.
How many car dealers are in the area?
Yeah,
tons.
Yeah,
but the Weaver name stands above almost all of them.
Yeah, and it's just because, I mean, everyone in that family is running at 120% at all times.
Yeah,
and like something I say to Abby is, I think she thinks she takes it a little bit. Not in the best way, but I mean it with like the greatest of hearts, is that like I wouldn't want her life, because she's just overwhelmed with just all these meetings and just people who don't know what they're doing, and they're trying really hard, and she's helping just more like just helping out of the generosity of her heart. And it's just, you know, you see people like Savis who really just
met Abby through Savis.
Oh yeah. I mean, Savis comes into the the coffee shop. I don't know where I work. He comes in the coffee shop a good bit, and so it's always nice to, like, I'm probably never gonna go into businesses or anything like that, but
you
it's
never
like,
know.
Yeah, but it's cool to be like, I know people, and like to see that it's definitely doable. Like, I know that it's been incredibly hard for everyone involved in all of these projects, but to see that it's like, oh, okay, so this isn't outside of the realm of possibility, but it has to be, like you're saying, like, dedicated.
You have to be willing to put it in. Yeah, I get all the time from the people that I do these shows with and outside people, like, do you ever sleep? Like, because you're like, or like, I leave work at 6 because I work a normal 40-hour day job like everybody else, and I go from a 40-hour day job, and then I put another 80 hours in that week of just this podcast, and everyone's like, you do 4 different shows, you're here, you're at bands, you're shaking hands, I'm like, you have to. I got to work just as hard outside that I do inside, and you got to, because if you don't network, you're never going to get anywhere.
I remember, like, being a kid, and my friends would play a lot of that what if fantasy, like, what if we won $1 million? You know, and like, that's fun, but like at a certain age you have to realize that that's not going to happen. You know,
instead of what if, what can I do too?
And I think, well, that's because it's the total change in perspective of people being like, I just want to receive something, instead of being like, I'm going to go out and get it. You know, and I think that's totally, like, for me, I moved to Oregon in the summer of 2017, and I would say one of the reasons that I did it was because I just had this revelation. Because I remember saying this to someone, I'm like, one day I'd like to live in Oregon. And then I'm just like, well, when does one day happen? Like, that's just some myth that I made up, one day. Who knows if that'll ever rear its ugly head, you know? So I'm like, well, I guess you got to do it, you know? Like,
it's not, shut up.
Well, right, and it's like, I think the thing with like music or any form of art or podcast or like anything that you want to do, like, it's not just gonna happen. You have to like put in your hours.
I when I first started this, it was more therapy for me. I grew up athletic. I loved playing sports. I loved doing all that. 16, I was diagnosed with like a joint disorder. And I was told, stop playing sports now, because if you don't, by the time you hit your 30s, you're going to have a body of an 80-year-old. Or they said 60. And I was like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, but when you get that old, I'm sure it doesn't change that much.
And then I was like, who's 30? I don't even know what 30 is going to be like. And I just hit 30, and they weren't lying. I should have stopped playing sports. But then I got to the point where I put on some weight. I can't be as active as I want to. Like, my stress relief was to go out and play basketball till the sun came up the next day. That was my way of releasing. And then I was like, man, I need to, like, everything I've ever put into, I can't do anymore. Or if I can't do it at the same level. And I'm the type of person, if I have to be all in or I'm not in at all. So then I turned it to coaching, and I loved coaching. So I coached soccer for a long time. And then it's just really hard to find a job that you could be a full-time coach as well.
Right.
So I was like, you know what? I can take these low jobs, or I can stop doing the coaching and work on a career. Mm-hmm. And I was like, all right, so I had to stop coaching. And then my slump fell in because I had nothing to keep myself active. So then not an active mind where I had to, because I need to, like, when I start something, I got to turn it to 11. Mm-hmm. And I got to be super in depth with it. Like, when I'm not doing it, I'm researching, I'm looking, I'm like, man, if I did this or this or this, and I'm always brainstorming, because if I stay active, mm-hmm. I'm good. But if the second I sit down, I'm like, and you decompress, and you have nothing to do the next day and the day after that. You're like, mm-hmm. the anxiety, the depression.
Right. Well, I was talking to somebody about this recently, about the idea of we were talking about the idea of universal basic income, and mm-hmm. I don't want to get political.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I think I would agree to it to some degree. But I think the human need for purpose is inescapable. Mm-hmm. And I think that you'll get people who will use that money, and they'll use it properly to fund themselves and their ambitions and their arts and their skills or what have you. But then there might be people who just try to live off of that. And I think that's fine too.
Yep.
But I think ultimately you're going to come to that place of, like, I need something to do.
Yeah.
You know? And because I think that's just the kind of animals we are. It's mm-hmm. just we need to work.
Yeah. So when I first started this as well, I was like, man, this is going to be a fun hobby. Mm-hmm. And then my friend Nikolai, who helped me,
this isn't something you can just make a hobby.
Stop saying hobby, because, and I'm not trying to, like, this is not my words, but he's like, you're too good at what you're doing to be calling this a hobby. Mm-hmm. He goes, you're the work you're putting in is not hobby work.
Right.
He goes, you need to start getting that mentality that you're in it to win it. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean about, like, not work, because I work with people. I'm still open. My door's always open. I don't care if you do the same thing I do. I'll work with you. But that switch hit maybe a month ago where I'm like, you know what? Like, this isn't a hobby anymore. Like, I'm working at this. Mm-hmm. If it ever became a career, cool. If it doesn't, cool. Mm-hmm. But I'm trying to take it to the next step now. Right. You know what I mean?
Well, I think there's something to be said about getting, I don't know, maybe, like, titles are taboo, especially, like, in a field like podcasting where mm-hmm. you kind of, or even, like, writing or being a musician, is you have to self-subscribe those titles, and that can be, that'll turn people off because they're like, oh, you're a podcaster for a living, and they'll be, like, that attitude, which they can go fuck themselves.
Yeah.
But, like,
realistically, you could say you could break anything down until it sounds mm-hmm. stupid. Mm-hmm. Like,
absolutely. Yeah, because, when I was living in Oregon, I intentionally worked part-time to work on this book and just other stuff. And I'm like, all right, I'm an artist now. You know, like, this is what it means. Like, I remember the day that I started working part-time, I went out and bought myself some whiskey, because I'm like, this is what writers do. Mm-hmm. They drink whiskey, you know?
Yeah.
And, like, so I went home.
You put yourself in your own stereotype.
Yeah, and I think people get turned off by that because they don't want to be like, you don't want to be cliche, you don't want to seem very pompous or something like that. Mm-hmm. But if you just own up to who you are, then you don't have to worry about appeasing these other people that are just, they're not even going to read your shit anyways. They're not going to listen to your music, then what does it matter? Yeah. Like, they're just just fart blowing in the wind.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Like, people go like, oh man, I really love to listen to your podcast, but I looked at it and it was a 2-hour interview. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I don't do 2-minute things. Like, I'm sorry, your attention. Like, for me, I hate going on YouTube and finding a clip. Like, I found this really, really good video. I'm not political, but I always try to watch both sides of the spectrum just to kind of get... I like to see where the world is sitting. Mm-hmm. And it makes you well-rounded, and it kind of puts you like, okay, I can develop my center point, and I can see where both sides are coming from if that conversation ever happens. Mm-hmm. And it was a video of... It was everybody in the video was black, African American, and there was left wing and right wing, but they were the same people, same culture. They all came from the same neighborhoods, the same that same lifestyle. Because I know a lot of people always say, "Oh, black lives are different than white lives," and Hispanic. They took the same thing, like both sides were black, and they said one side was very right wing and one was very left. And the video was chopped up to a 6-minute video. Mm-hmm. And they literally took them arguing the whole time, and then at the last 30 seconds, they're like showing everyone like, "Oh, that was fun. Let's take a picture." And I was so disappointed because I was like, I wanted to see that. I would have watched that for 2 hours because that's human interaction, that's storytelling, that's people getting to the heart of things. And you're telling me that these people got to the point where they were getting visibly angry at each other, and then by the end they're like hugging each other and let's take a group photo. I wanted to see that transition.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I guess for me it'd be like there's clearly some sort of bias or some. Anytime there's editing of a debate or something like that, it's like you're not editing without a purpose.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say whatever that purpose is, but like I don't like that because that means I'm hearing something out of context.
Yes.
Like and I try not to. I do this and I think that it's right.
Yeah.
Hopefully because I do it, but I'd like to be educated, like you said, about all the issues and every stance of it, and not to stand outside of those things, for a lack of a better term, and look at them and see them as tools to when a situation might need that idea or that philosophy or something like that. And I try not to attach myself to those things because then you get caught in ideologies, or you have to defend your political party to the death, and you can't critique yourself, and you can't be a real person if you're just a reflection of an echo of something you've heard.
I like to compare when people are super diehard for their political party, even though in their mind there's probably some things about their political party they don't like, is like when someone's favorite sports team's best player like does something terrible, like kill or beat up their girlfriend, and they're like, but did you see the video? She kind of spit on him. Like, you're like, because he's on my team. I'm like, come on, just
that's what that leads to. And I think what's really important is looking at people from who they actually like are, and not just who they pretend to be, but like how.
That's a big thing too. People when people get into a public limelight, or even like when they do something like this, like I know people who podcast and they're like, okay, when I podcast I need to be the person I think everybody wants me to be, and I learned, I said from the very, very beginning that I'm not going to do that. Like I'm going to sit and have a beer on camera, you know what I mean? But on the same token, if I have an interview where I talk about real an alcoholism, I'm not going to obviously do that, but I mean I'm not going to sugarcoat and say who I'm not. I'm not going to perceived to be someone I'm not. Like, our podcasts have curses in it, and I don't edit them out. We talk about things that may offend you, but it's not intended to be that way. It's just natural conversation. Like, so if someone tries to come up to me later on, like, oh, well, you put yourself, I'm like, nope. The way I am on this camera is exactly how I'm going to be if you see me out in public.
Well, right, because it's like, God, that sounds exhausting to have to try to live up to this persona.
Could you imagine if Jimmy Fallon got caught blowing lines of coke in a nightclub right now, and he's America's sweetheart as this talk show? Like, now, realistically, people who know Jimmy Fallon, he's a party animal.
Yeah, so, like, I guess for me, I would be like, let the man do coke.
Yeah.
You know? Like, that's what, like...
But their heads would explode.
Well, okay, so this was, like, I was in a Christian community for a very long time.
That's exhausting, isn't it?
Yeah. We can talk about that later. But seeing people who would get offended in church by like the word damn or something, and then like that the job that they work, that people talk like that, so it's like you're living this double life, and everyone, and I won't say everyone, a lot of people do that, and it's not just religious folks, but rock stars do it 100%. Like I mean I know people who probably aren't in the music industry anymore, or music whatever it is, because it's too much for them. It's too much for their psyches to bear, to go up and try to be this hyper person, and it's like that's insustainable. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, it's so much easier just being yourself.
Well, it's okay. So this, I got this from my buddies one time, because I can be like just very silly. I can also get very serious, and I don't really filter myself. I usually say what I'm thinking, and for the most part, I don't really give a fuck how people respond to it. Like, obviously, I'm not out to hurt or offend anybody, but I'm just living my life, and that's how it's going. And a lot of my friends would be like, well, Tim, like, aren't you scared that that'll scare away a girl or something like that? I'm like, I would want it to, like, any girl that can't, like, be with me, and that's something I love about my girlfriend, is that she loves me. She loves my silliness. She loves me making just stupid jokes, and just being like, well, why I don't have to worry about showing her like this like real side of me when I've always been like, this is me, like what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
And
I think a lot of people too, when they start in the relationship thing or friendship thing, they put on a persona of who they want, who they think that person they're trying to build that relationship, whether it be a friendship or a physical, intimate relationship. They put on a thing where like, I think this is the type of person that person wants to be with, and then you're dating for 2 years, and you're like, then you move in, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna be me now, and that person's like, wait a second, who's this person? And you're like, oh fuck, like I'm the same way. When I met my wife, we were together 8 years before we got married, and not to get political, but we always joked around like, hey, the day everybody's allowed to get married, we'll get married. And the year, like, it just came up, like the year, you know, gay marriage was like, equality was passed. We're like, oh, we got to do it now. We're doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Terrain Meyrick's of Alcoholics. I think he had that same philosophy, and now he's married.
Yep.
And, yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, but it's just be yourselves, people.
Yeah, it's not that hard. You're doing it right now.
Yeah.
Just keep doing what you're doing, and you'll be fine.
And keep it pushing. So you said you've been in the music scene for a long time. What are some of the bands or types of music you've crossed paths with?
Oh man, so I started out in like a very just straight emo band. We covered. This was when I was 13. We covered maybe 13's too young. 14, 15, somewhere in that area, but young. And we were just covering like Hawthorne Heights and Atreyu. Yeah. And
15 years old, I was like, I was obsessed with music, but never once did it cross my mind like I should go pick up an instrument. I don't know why I never did that. Like I was obsessed with it.
Dude, I'll say this, like poetry and writing and words have always been super important to me. And like that's what made me want to be in the music scene, was like, here's a avenue by which I can share these things or do these things or participate in these things. And yeah, I don't know. I've just always, it's always been like that draw for me. Like I want to be a part of this. I want to, whatever this is happening, I want to be a part of it. But so I was in that band. We were called Less Than Three because that's the heart thing. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what we were called. That. I can't remember what my next band was, but the band, I started in this band called Spartacus You're So Cute, and it was, the genre that we gave it was Nintendo Pop Tech Core.
Okay.
And
you happy at Nintendo.
And so we were super into like Horse the Band. I don't know if you okay, so they were like a heavier band, just super like spastic, that had was very keyboard focused. And we wanted to do that. So it started off with just this drummer and I, and we were just writing like poppy sounding songs that like would occasionally have like heavier parts. And because we were just like, this was like during the MySpace heyday, and we were listening to just these crazy bands online. Like Bubblegum Octopus was just this weird like dude who, do you know Fruity Loops? Yeah. Okay, so there'd just be like some guy on Fruity Loops and just like pretending to sing like a girl and then like doing a deep monster voice, and it's just like these weird stuff. That's one thing.
There's a guy like right now that I'm obsessed with. Like I'm gonna butcher his last name.
Sure.
But it's Mark Ribilt or something. He looks, he's like, I don't want to say like the hipster look, but he has like the combed over vaudevillain hair with the glasses, the mustache, super skinny guy, and he has a beat machine, and he just literally at a keyboard, and he'll just loop a beat, and he'll just keep looping it and adding more to the beat, and then he just sings these like hilarious songs.
I think I've heard of him,
but he's super talented. Like he's like, he can make a beat like that, and like,
ooh, here's a good talk. So like, I actually struggle with people who are, because I know a decent amount of people that are like this, that are super talented, but they write silly shit because they're too scared to. Yeah, this is my assumption. They're too scared to actually be like, if I really tried. Because, like, it's not hard to write a silly song. Like, at least not for me, but maybe I'm just a silly person.
Yeah.
I was born in a rodeo. Yeah. I don't know, rodeos wouldn't have those. I'm thinking of clowns. I guess, you know, rodeos have clowns.
Or circus.
That's what I was thinking of.
Where else would clowns be?
Yeah. Clownfinder.com.
The White House. Oh, no.
Slam dunk. No. But, oh, God, I forgot what I was saying. Oh, no, but for like, these musicians who are like, just like blow my mind talented, and then they're just like, look how wacky I am.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's great and it's fun, but like, man, I bet if you, but also I'm like, I take myself way too seriously with my music. Like, I don't think I have one funny song, and I'm like I lean to being a funny person. Yeah. And I don't know, I take myself too seriously probably.
Yeah, so. One of my favorite bands is one of those bands.
Oh, really?
Steel Panther.
I don't know.
So Steel Panther is like they're an 80s metal gimmick band.
Okay.
And all their songs are like Big Gangbang at the Old Folks Home, and Bukkake Tears, and Glory Hole, and but they're insanely talented. They have one song that's not really like drug, sex, rock and roll, and inappropriate, and it's a song they open every show with. It's called "Eye of the Panther," and it's a legit 80s hair metal song. Yeah, it's phenomenal.
That's awesome.
But I guess they just got sick of being turned down by every label, and they're like, I mean, if we make dick and fart and pussy jokes, people will love it.
Like it.
And they went and played the Viper Room, and they thought it'd be funny to put spandex on and do their hair and fluff it out, and they went out and played, and they're like, you guys should do this every week. And they're like, told you. Yeah. They're like, cool, it's going to pay my rent, let's just keep doing it.
Okay, so there was this one Nickelback song, and I didn't know it was a Nickelback song at the time, but my mom played it for me with some friends of hers, because we were in my mom's barn. There's an old jukebox that like standing up, like has 100
Where's
CDs.
this barn at?
It's in Auburn. Yeah, so like if you drive through Haven, it's like this super small farming area, and just up on the hills. You know where Lake Winona is?
Yes.
Okay, so it's like on the ass end of Lake Winona.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we were in there, and she played this Nickelback song. I think it was Nickelback or something. It was so clearly pandering to people who like to fuck and like to get drunk, and like I like those things. But like, boys, just like it's just like you're appealing to just the animal within. And
I think it was actually called Animal.
There's a song. It's I like the only line I can ever think about is like I like the pants around your feet or ankles or something that.
Yeah. I don't think that's Nickelback.
No, was that wrong? Whoever it was, it made me violently like angry.
Actually, it might be Nickelback.
Because I'm just like, this is the dumbest song I've ever heard. Yeah. And like people just love it. I mean, somehow there was a train of progression that song was written, and then my mother had it on her jukebox in a barn in Auburn. Yeah. And the momentum that had to be behind that is just, I'm just like, what are you people doing? But I'm also, again, apparently I'm an asshole, because people love those songs.
Yes.
And
there's a gap in between like in the 2000s where just every rock band, just all mainstream rock just turned to a style of rock and roll that it was that. Yeah. Like, just, and it wasn't cool anymore. And then like pop and hip hop took over. And then to find really good bands is hard to do. Like, you have to dig for them because they're not being played in the radio. Like, it's amazing the Foo Fighters are still a thing because they're phenomenal, but they don't get any radio play. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I can't tell you the last time I listened to the radio just because
I'm sick of it.
Yeah. Like, and I don't. Okay, so I need to say this because I go on like little tangents like this where I just shit on people's favorite music. And so this is something I've learned and try to put into practice is like, when I listen to music, I receive a certain type of euphoria of like it being cathartic, something that I can relate to, something I can relax with, something that hypes me up, something that relaxes me. You know, it's all things. Yeah. And so if a person can have that same experience with a type of music that I don't like, who am I to shit on that person for doing the same thing in essence that I'm doing?
Yeah, same thing with me. Like with movies and music, I'm like, man, I didn't like that movie, but I would never go out of my way to go tell someone how terrible it was because you may have a different experience. I'll tell you why I didn't like it, but I don't have the ability to create like that. Like someone went and created that.
Yeah, because think about like being a director.
Yeah,
but like, okay, so if I was like, Anthony, tomorrow you're going to direct a movie. God bless and good luck. Yeah, you know, like
probably dog shit.
Yeah, and because you're just like, I wouldn't even know where to begin. Yep. You know? And so it's just like for you to like sit there with your big tub of popcorn and be like, this is stupid. It's just, sure, there is some level where it's like they put that forward to receive that criticism. Yeah. But at the same time, you need to, remember who you are. Yeah. Fatty watching the movie,
yeah,
you know?
When you're watching football and you're 800 pounds, you're like, catch the ball. Yeah. Like, yeah. Something that you're catching is diabetes. Shut up.
So, yeah, I think that's just... I think that's important because, I don't know, letting people just be who they... Like, okay, so going back to who we are, like, the easiest way to be yourself is to hopefully set up a society where people allow you to do that. You know?
I would say be yourself, but also be open-minded. Yeah, I think that helps too. But I actually catch, like, I hear a lot more music now. Not so much new stuff because it just doesn't get played. But now that I work in like an office situation where they let the radio play, I get to hear some stuff, but a lot of it's like recycle like 90s and stuff like that. But I always get like a really popular song after it's no longer popular and people hate it. So like right now I'm on that Old Town Road song.
Okay, yeah.
And everyone's like, it's so bad. I'm like, I think it's fun because it takes two genres of music that like you would never hear together, and it made something cool. Like Old Town Road to me is is Aerosmith, Run DMC collaborating and making something decent out of it. You know what I mean? Like, I thought it was a cool idea.
Okay, so let me just make sure that Old Town Road, that's with
Billy Ray Cyrus
and that. Okay, so do you
Lil
know
Nas X or whatever?
Do you know that he's gay?
Who?
The rapper.
Really?
Yeah,
I did not know that.
So my girlfriend just read me this article before he came over here about how that record was. That song was #1 throughout all of Pride Month, which is awesome. Yeah. And it's also like a country song. So it was a black gay man at the top of the charts in the country western.
Everyone's just like...
Yeah, and you're just like, what is this?
Yeah.
We're living in some sort of like weird acid trip.
So I think the funniest part about that, I was reading where Taylor Swift has a record going where every time she releases a song, she's been #1 every single time for a certain amount of weeks since she's debuted, and she has yet to hit #1 with her new single because Old Town Road is dominating. and actually,
well, maybe that's country coming back to her and being like, you shouldn't have left.
Yeah, and the funny thing is like the country people, they don't like that song's #1 because
why would you?
Yes, because it's like. It's literally just kind of like it's kind of
a fun song.
It's like shitting on theirs, like I cheated on my baby. You know what I mean? Like I think it's hilarious, but like it just shows that like
it's what is that, satire?
Yeah, it's like the very satire. But but like I think it's awesome. But they wouldn't put it on the country billboards until he did the remix with Billy Ray Cyrus, and then it got praised as a country song.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's crazy. God,
But Hootie's okay if Hootie does it. Darius Rucker,
Oh, man. I loved him. I watched this video of him getting inducted into the, what is that, the Grand Ole Opry.
Yeah.
And I bawled like a baby.
Really?
Yeah, because, like, that would be awesome. Like, that's the greatest achievement you could, like, want for someone in that genre.
Yeah.
You know? Like, obviously there's probably more that I don't really know, but, like, that's awesome. And then, like, for it to be a black man, it's just like, yeah, you're, like, we're fucking doing it. Like, we're getting rid of these things.
20, 30, 40 years ago, you wouldn't even be allowed in the building.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like, I've just bawled because I'm just like, this is such a beautiful thing. Because he's, like, it's not like he's just up there. Again, like, this is just two white dudes talking about this, but, like, him representing, like, no, this doesn't just belong to white men. Yeah. And, like, I think that that's good, you know, especially how much like white people have stolen from other races, you know. But I mean, that's there's a theory that Indian food wasn't spicy until they started interacting with the Spaniards. So like, what is original, you know? But that's a whole different topic.
Yeah. So get into music now. You did.
I don't even know if I ever answered that question.
I think we did.
Yeah.
So you if I'm jumping too far ahead and there's anything in between, please stop me. But you decided then you were going to do some traveling. How did that come about?
So I this is actually really funny and connected to the music thing.
And that's a huge risk to be like, all right, I'm school county. Most people it's not, people think it's a school county thing, but it's actually a society thing. Like. It's like I think they call it like the nesting effect, where like most people don't leave a 50-mile radius of where they were born. They just kind of stay there, and it's very, very rare when someone leaves that and explores other things.
Yeah,
it's a very hard thing for people to like do. They can go vacation, but like to go and just kind of immerse yourself and be like, I don't know where I'm going to sleep tonight. Yeah.
So when I was in high school, I found religion, let's say that for lack of a better term, and I was super involved into it. Just
what religion?
I was Christianity, just a Pentecostal.
Okay.
just non-denominational, just your run-of-the-mill Pentecostal.
Yeah, I when I was I grew up Irish Catholic, then Protestant, and then when I was getting in the church, I did the non-denomination things. I thought it made more sense. And then I was like, oh, okay. And then I started learning about other religions, and then it ruined everything.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's okay. We'll save that.
Yeah.
But
Cliff note.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's no topic I'd want to talk about more than that.
Yeah.
But so I decided So originally I was going to go for theology and philosophy, just pick a random college and major in that. But I don't really like school too much, and I wanted to do something a little bit more practical. Not that those things are wrong, but I actually wanted to go and help people. So I became a missionary, and I graduated high school in, I guess, June. It was June 1st, June 1st, 2009. And then I moved to Taiwan in September of 2009. So it was only 3 months after graduation that I was like, I'm moving here. And I look back on it. And, so I lived in Taiwan for 5 years and did missions work, and I traveled a lot.
It's crazy.
Yeah. It's me saying it, and I lived it, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. Because it just seems like a dream. Because I've been back in the States now for 4 years. And I'm like, that's crazy. It's just what? It's just kind of catching up to me, being like, what did you just do? But
where in Taiwan?
I lived in this town called Danshui, which meant freshwater. It was on the coast, and I worked in Taipei, so I worked in the capital. I ran a skateboard ministry with a buddy of mine from Canada. We met over there, and we had similar visions, and so we just started working together, and we planted a church towards the later half of my time being there. I did Bible school, and I studied Mandarin Chinese for the first 3 years I was there.
That was one of the things I heard, that you could speak Mandarin.
Yeah.
And I always joke around with, when I hear the Mandarin, it just immediately pops Always Sunny in Philadelphia. You ever watched Always Sunny?
Yeah, I have, but I don't know.
When Charlie, they were giving him the smart pills, and he thought he was talking Mandarin, and he was literally speaking gibberish.
Yeah, yeah.
But no one knows Mandarin for the most part.
Yeah.
To call him out on it.
Yeah. Well, I remember. Okay, so there was this one. This is a silly story. So I'd say 50% of the conversation that I would have in a day-to-day was in Chinese. So I was bilingual for the most part. I don't consider myself bilingual because I'm not pretentious. But, and I just know that there's a lot that I don't know.
Would it freak people out when you would walk up to them and they would be like, and you would just start speaking Mandarin?
Some people were used to it.
Yeah.
But other people, well, they're super polite people. So no matter how good, if you knew how to say hello, how are you, they would be like, wow, your Chinese is the best thing that's ever happened in this nation.
Thank you.
I'm happy to be your friend.
Yeah.
And I mean, you think about it over here, it's just I'm not pressing one for Spanish.
Yeah.
It's just shut up.
Yeah.
You expect to go everywhere else in the world and have their signs in English.
Exactly.
They have no idea what they're talking about. But, so I think I was already finished my Chinese schooling at this time, so I was pretty proficient. In order for me to graduate from my Chinese class, I had to give a 45-minute sermon at a church in Taipei. So that was you're good enough to go out into the world now. And I actually finished the course half a year earlier than most students.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, what is the typical religion of Taiwan?
It would be Taoist. Taoist and a lot of ancestral worship.
Okay.
Which isn't Taoist by nature.
What the cliff notes of that? What is their
cliff notes? Okay, so Taoism means the way. So essentially, it's just there is a path in which the universe is kind of expanding out, and it itself has a pattern to it. And us being a part of the universe, we too have patterns in which we should live to the highest of which we can obtain.
So it's just like most religions, it has standards. Don't do this, do this, be a good person. But they don't have a higher power or being. They have a god, but they don't have
It's not. They would deify the way. If I think it's the proper way to say it, and I'm no expert in this, but they would say that the way is ultimately the highest thing that there is, and that's why they're Taoism. Like the same. I guess we're jumping ahead.
Yeah.
But Christianity has a similar idea in it that just has been lost a long time ago. But it was the original Christians used to be called followers of the way.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous to me that these two religions that never met ended up with very similar practices and the same name.
Yeah.
And it's just like, well, yeah, of course, like, because they're trying to embody this thing, like, from a Taoist perspective, this universal pattern, like, of course they're going to find it's going to be the same thing here as it is over there, because they're trying to figure out the same thing.
Yeah.
You know? But, so, I didn't know, I know more about Taoism now than I did when I was... Dude, I was totally ignorant. If you... Let's say a month before I left for Taiwan, if you would have like handed me a globe and said, find where Taiwan is, I wouldn't have been able to find it.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I got my plane ticket. I'm signed up for this Bible school. I'm going. I didn't know where it was. I didn't know what the living conditions were going to be like. I remember telling my parents, like, I don't know if I'm going to have internet, period. Yeah. You know, like, and this is only because I just don't know how to Google things, apparently.
Yeah. And every time people think you leave our borders, it is literally a third world country everywhere in the globe.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, I mean, I remember my mom, like, she wanted me to come home for some reason because she was worried about something. And I'm like, I am so much safer here than the place that is causing the conflicts. They're like, do you realize that? And like, I'm just on some island that everyone thinks is Thailand.
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to be a problem to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, there was always rumors that China would come and, like, try to take back Taiwan. Because there's, like, the big, like, debate about whether or not Taiwan is part of China.
Yes.
And I say it's not because I had my passport was only good in Taiwan. My, like, visa was only, in Taiwan.
Didn't they lose Taiwan during one of the wars?
No, they lost it in the beginning of, like, the 1900s. And it was, I don't know the stories that well for living there so long.
I knew it was part of China, and then they kind of...
Well, what's crazy is that the nation itself is about, this is like the percentages from when I lived there, and I left in 2015, but the nation was only 2% Aboriginal people because everyone came from mainland China. And I believe that the people who came from mainland China was able to reflect on how China was going and decided that they wanted to separate and go more of a democratic route instead of socialism and communism.
So Taiwan, that's literally another version of the United States in some...
Yeah, I mean, it's a democracy. It has a president. I think there was 3 parties, not 2. But yeah.
Imagine that.
Yeah. Well, it was. I never got involved with politics just because what am I gonna do? I'm just some white dude. Like, I mean, obviously, like, I don't want it to go back to China because then me being a missionary isn't going to be accepted.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just a weird thing to be like one night I remember sitting in my room and I heard loud bangs going on, and I was just convinced that it was China coming to invade Taiwan because it didn't sound like fireworks, and I heard like planes flying overhead. I'm just like, all right, this is it. Like, I guess
this is how I die.
Yeah, and like, or just like even thinking about like, I work with all these people. How am I going to get a hold of them? Like, what's going to happen? I'm literally on the other side of the world. And then I went outside and it was just fireworks. Oh. But it was like crazy to just be like, oh my God, I almost had to deal with. I didn't, but like from my perspective, it felt like I was going to get invaded, and it was like a rational fear.
Now, when you go over there, they send you over there to pretty much your main objective is to spread Christianity.
Yeah, yeah. I would definitely say that that's an aspect of it.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever have backlash? Like, hey, like we already kind of have our thing here. Like, did you ever?
Not really. Because I don't... It was the hardest to try to talk to them just because the ground on which the overlap of myths or imagery was just so small and like on the surface level, and so it's so hard to try to bridge that gap because it's just like, well, and also I think a big doctrinal point of Protestant Christianity is the idea of Jesus dying for your sins.
Your sins, yes.
And so like these people are just out there living like the Taoists very much so, and again, I'm just from what I understand and what I've read is they understand, they see their negative actions and they see their positive actions as a part of the whole thing. Whereas I think Christians are, Protestant Christians are more of just like, I just want to get the sin and the bad stuff out of the way. Whereas the Taoist, I would say, understands that has a part in the whole of whatever's happening here.
That's interesting because most religions, they always put a figure to their religion so someone can physically look at something and be like, that's what I have to praise or worship to get to the place I would need to be at some point.
Well, see, I like how you worded it there because that's absolutely right. Is that there's I always vision it as like we need there's a stream.
Figure.
We need there's a stream, and we need bridges to get to that stream. Some people know how to get to the stream just on themselves, but some people culturally need these bridges to have these structures to get to that place. And how you said is that it's behind the person. And so I was actually talking to someone about this the other day. This is something that doesn't exist probably because of the birth of Protestant Christianity. We don't have guru worship. We don't have devotion to a single entity. We just kind of have these big, deity or God figures, and that's fine. These other religions have those, but they ultimately have the gurus set up in place to play that role. The proper guru, for lack of a better term, doesn't exist. They're emerged into that other place, and so they're just playing the role of that. So when people come to them, theoretically, there's no ego involved. There's no manipulation. They're just going to kind of give you the ultimate. And we don't have that. And we kind of do in pastors, but then they're always like, don't worship me or whatever. But like, we kind of do because like we need your voice to like hear these things or whatever. But yeah, I totally subscribe to the theory that these religions are just their word and placeholders for something that we can't even begin to comprehend. The
biggest thing that was a turnoff for me with Christianity and our being a Christian, I don't know, because some people get to say when you say I was Catholic and Christian, it's all the same sport. It just there's more teams on the field than some of them. But like, the biggest turnoff for me. So like I was part of like I called it white church, that's right, and then I started learning. I went to black church. Black church is a blast because they're more energetic and they actually teach you and they talk to you. Where I used to go to white church and it was like, amen, and you stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down. Where in the Southern Baptist style church, it was more like they spoke to you. But the only problem with that is when they start doing like, I talked to the Lord yesterday, and I was like, all right, now you're losing me.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the problem with any because okay, so once you start talking about the ultimate, or you start talking about religions, you need to understand that all of this is just kind of placeholders, and like we need these. I had this discussion with someone the other day about like, was Jesus real or not? And I'm just like, well, what does it matter to you? It's a story either way.
Yeah.
So like, even if this man did exist, if he didn't, you're still hearing it literally the exact same way.
100%.
So it's like that's a non-starter. I think that people that are just like, no, Jesus can't be real, they're not actually looking at like the heart of the issue. They're just trying to disprove something, and that's fine. Like I'm saying, Jesus may not have been a real person.
Yeah.
That's not where
What about the theory of where Jesus, like there's a gap in his age where people believe he went and studied like
sure. Yeah. That's the biggest problem about that gap because it's like from 13 till he's 30 or something like that. So it's just a lot of time just being like, well, what was he doing? And I mean, there's like, and that's the problem is that everything's just a theory.
Yeah.
And so I guess like there's a part of me that's like, well, why are you asking these questions? Like, what are you trying to get to the bottom to? Like, why do you, like? Why
I think a lot of people just want to destroy a religion. I think that's what it comes down to. When they want to, everyone has to try to prove each other wrong. I think if religion works for somebody, let it work for them. I may not subscribe to the same thing you believe in, but if your religion works for you, great. But when I think what sometimes what bugs me is when someone's like, I am a devout this religion, and if you don't believe what I believe, we can't associate, we can't talk, I can't have a conversation with you, because realistically, if you boil down you could take every religion and strip it down and boil it down to its bone, and everybody wants the same thing. Just treat each other with respect.
Well, right. It's like you don't. It's like you don't want to be a follower of Jesus. You don't want to be a follower of Buddha. You want peace.
Yeah.
You want grace. You want these things that these entities offer you.
Yes.
You know. So it's like, and that's fine, because I personally think that that's a human universal, that we all desire these things that kind of transcend us, and we pick 1,000 different ways to do that.
I think some people try to say, like, I think it's more like an ego thing where I'm too smart to follow. Like, people think, like, if you follow religion, you're like, oh, I'm being conformed, or I'm being put in a box.
I think, I guess what I would say to those people is, like, you haven't read the craziest things in religions.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and those things in and of themselves might disqualify them, but to not be able to follow because some things are just so absurd that it's just like, well, how did you get to that conclusion? Because this was a big thing for me. Because I was a very devout Christian. I was a missionary, and then I started to question all these things, and just being like, if there's one universe that we can all agree that we're experiencing, then that means that we're all trying to find, or we're experiencing the same things. So when you have a moment of transcendence where you feel like close to a God type figure, and I do, it's that right there, the experience of it all is what's ultimately important. I read this book called Zen and the Birds of Appetite, and it's by a man named Thomas Merton, and it was a comparative between Zen Buddhism and Catholic Christianity. And what he said, and I will always remember this because I think it's phenomenal and right. It's like, even though the doctrines or the theories may be world apart, when the experiences are the same, then you know you have something. Because it's true. Like, there's a million different ways to get to that place, but ultimately what's important is getting to that place. And I think I don't think that can be understated, that's important.
And then a lot of, like, because I start looking into a lot more religions, then you have it's like Egyptian, I believe it's Egyptian, the towel, and they said the towel is very, I could be saying that wrong. If I am, correct me, but they said it's super, like, it's almost identical to the story of Jesus Christ, and it happened almost,
it's the theory of archetypes,
thousands of years before Jesus even happened, and it's almost the same story, the same teaching, the same belief. Like, it literally, now, do you think your missionary work opened you up to, maybe, I'm not saying you don't, I don't know what you don't follow, or I don't know what you believe in now, but do you think, because for a big thing for me that really turned me off of all religion and kind of just treating everyone with respect and doing what you gotta do, is like, it was something that I guess like an atheist dude said on a thing, and I kind of subscribed to it a little bit, where if you just literally take somebody and say, I'm going to wipe all your memories and everything about you completely dry, and I'm going to drop you in this part of the map, you're going to have a completely different outlook on a higher being than if you were living here.
Yep.
So do you think you picking up, going to a third world country where you're in a not third world country, but a different country where they believe something completely different than you, and then you've learned a lot about that religion, you're like, wow, it's very, very similar. You know what I mean? Like,
it wasn't that did it for me, really. It was and this is a fault, I was under the assumption that Christianity was the only proper religion. And that's just because that's what I was taught. And I didn't feel the need to go outside of that worldview until I did. And it was mostly, that in order for all of this stuff that we believe within Christianity, in order for it to be true or valid, it needs to work everywhere. And I didn't see that like science was a big thing for me.
Yes.
Because like they were the people that I was working for and everything was very much against the idea of evolution.
Yeah.
Or at least we're timid of it, to say, to be gentle about it.
Yeah.
And I that was hard for me because I'm like, well, you trust science to make your pills, you trust science to make your GPSs that you depend on. Why is science wrong about this one? It's because it threatens your worldview.
Yeah.
And so that was like a big thing for me, was sitting back and just studying evolution and studying Christian perspectives on evolution or something like that. But I just got to a place where I was like, I realized it was okay for me to have different beliefs than the worldview I was handed and was living in.
Here's a really hilarious story. You're gonna love this. My wife always loves when I tell this. So when I was going through the CCD classes, I was kicked out of CCD because I asked too many questions.
Sure.
I sort of.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's
Yeah. So I go to class, and at the time you start CCD. I was in the very this CCD was like you started in like 4th grade or 3rd grade, and you worked all your way up. So I was started very young, and at the time, I was obsessed with 3 things in the world: pro wrestling, Ninja Turtles, dinosaurs. They are my shit. So we go to school, we go to CCD, and they're like, "All right, today's the first day. We're gonna start you kids off on Exodus." And and he's like, the first day God created that, and then He created that, and He created light, and then this and that and this, and I was just like, Yes, Anthony. Are we gonna talk about those dinosaurs? They're like, what? I was like, yeah, I'm really into that, and I know that they were here. There's bones, and I'm really pumped to hear the story of the dinosaurs and how they died. I thought that was in the Bible. Right?
Well, I mean, it makes sense to be like, well, okay, so before all of us happened, this other thing, but that was. Who knows what that was about?
Yeah, so I was super pumped. I went to CCD thinking I was going to learn about science, and I was going to learn about the history of the world. Because I mean, that in my perspective, that was what I was going into. So I was jacked. I was like, "This is going to be great.
Yeah,
it's going to be dinosaurs and comets and fire and explosions
and a man raising from the dead."
Yeah, and then
sounds just like pro wrestling.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. And they're like, "Tony, that's not a real thing." And I was like, "Wait, what?" And they're like, yeah, dinosaur, that's just people picking up rocks and saying, oh, this is what we think it is. And I was like, no, I'm not, don't do that. As my little kid brain,
right.
I don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
So then I just kept asking more questions. And the more I asked questions, I guess they pretty much pulled me aside. And at the time, if you tested me, I was probably ADHD. I was a kid. I was hyper.
Sure.
I was a Y kid. You know what I mean? And so they pulled my parents aside, can you not bring him back until he's a little older?
Yeah.
And they're like, why? He just asked too many questions. We can't handle this.
Yeah. Well,
we're not equipped for this.
Yeah. I mean, oh, dude. Okay, so I'm reading this book at the moment called Jesus, the Son of Man, and it's by Khalib Gilban or something like that, some Lebanese author who wrote a lot of phenomenal books. And so this book has each chapter is a different person writing about their experiences with Jesus, and one was a Pharisee. And he's like, listen, man, we had to kill him. He was manipulating poor people. He was degrading our law. He was blaspheming God. He was saying he was God. We can't let this person be out there doing this. And I'm like, that's a wonderful perspective. To just see that's just this guy came in and just fucked with the system and to the point of his death.
Yeah.
They killed him because he was that much of a political figure upsetting what was happening.
Yeah.
And it's bonkers.
Realistically, if someone came back tomorrow and said, I am Jesus Christ, we'd be like, that guy's fucking crazy, lock him up. We'd put him in jail.
Well, I think
Jesus would be in jail in 20 minutes.
Well, yeah. Well, ultimately, I think, the thing with Jesus never...
Let's just hope white Jesus comes, because if he's not white Jesus, he's probably getting shot.
Yeah. Well, gosh. That's...
Hot topic button.
Yeah. No, well, yeah. I think we don't... to talk about the second coming of Christ, it would be a whole other thing. And I'd be fine to talk about it, but
he's
I don't know...
This, what's what's in your hands? He's like, they're holes.
You got it through.
He's got something in his hand.
It's a hole. No, I don't know. I think. Oh yeah. Now I want to talk about the second coming, but
you can.
Well, okay. So there's this theory in some forms of Christianity that the second coming of Christ is essentially the time in human evolution where everyone's level of consciousness matches that of Jesus. Mm-hmm. That is ultimately the second coming of Christ. That's going to be a
long time.
Yeah.
That's going to be...
Well,
we can agree on anything. Mm-hmm. We're screwed.
Well, okay, so this is me playing the role of the optimistic believer and being like, let's take it that the universe is 13.6 billion years old, which I believe it is. Mm-hmm. Whatever is running the show clearly has patience and clearly knows what it's doing, and it's taking its time. And I think, part of that is that we get upset about is because we're kind of trapped in that. We're like, well, yeah, it'd be great for you to hurry the fuck up because I'm stuck here,
And we're creatures that always are asked. Like me, I was a little kid asking too many questions and it didn't work. That's our whole society. We're always asking why.
Well, here's something that's curious is that's a very similar thing that happens to Adam and Eve. They look at this thing and they're like, well, why? And so there's a part of me that believes that I don't believe there's any flaws in the system. So I believe the fact that we're creatures that look for answers, or even when it causes us to lose faith in our own worldview, that's still in us to go and try to seek that out. Mm-hmm. There's times where I get super just far out there and just be like, what if all we are is just mechanisms that go out and explore what God is on behalf of God? Mm-hmm. Sure, why not? And I guess the problem is with living in these philosophies or these ideologies or anything is what it ultimately comes down to is how do you act in the world? And I think what's important for me is that people don't see me as someone, I don't walk around being I'm a Christian, I believe in God, these things are so important to me. I guess I do that to some degree, but hopefully I hope that people can look at me and see that I have a connection to something that transcends me. Yeah. And I hope, and that I can't tell you if I live like that, only you can, you know? So, and someone asked me, one time, well, how do you define a true Christian? I'm like, only time can define who the real Christians were. Yeah. Because that's, if you take Christian as the person who follows the example of Christ, current Christians aren't doing that. No. So they're not those people, And Jesus even has this story about people who were healing people in his names, and the disciples want to stop him, and he's like, they're doing it. Why do you care what name it's being done in? Who's, you just want the glory. Mm-hmm. And it's no, the message and the energy of Jesus is being lived by people who don't even believe in him. Yeah. And so I'm then I don't have a problem with going and telling that person that he needs to believe in God, because the way that he's acting, even if they don't believe in God, says that they have reverence for creation, for the other,
Makes sense.
And so again, going back to
cause I always feel when I tell people that aren't Christian, because everyone talks religion every now and then, and they say, well, are you a Christian? I'm like, nah, not really. And they're like, why? I'm like, I'm not saying I don't believe in Jesus. Mm-hmm. If Jesus was a real person, he was a hell of a guy. He gave it. You can't sit there and say Jesus was an asshole. He did what he had to. He was even if he wasn't the Son of God, he was he did things for the right reasons. Mm-hmm. But when they asked me what my religion is, I said I don't want to say I'm agnostic or atheist, because I think just as much as Christians are deemed to be jerks sometimes, atheists and agnostics are just as bad. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Well, and again, let's not look at labels. Let's look at the actual actions 100%. Of just if you're an asshole, you're an asshole. Yeah. It doesn't matter what hat you're wearing.
So, and then I started looking into more religions, and then I always I don't feel this way, but I always joke around and say what are you? And especially if someone's that Christian that's kind of an asshole, I say, oh, I'm a Satanist. Mm-hmm. And they're like, what? And I was like, oh, that means you believe in the devil? And I was like, do you know what Satanism is?
Well, and also I would say that person believes in the devil. See, I don't like the word believes, because it's what does that mean?
Exactly.
And also, if the question of do you believe in God? Yeah. okay, so how do you define believe? Because
Yeah.
how you and I define believe isn't the same.
Yeah.
And God, to think that you and I have the same like picture of that in our head is
Yeah, like
it's
when
not
I die and you
happening.
die, where are we both? Like you
Yeah.
have an idea where you're going, and I kind of have an idea where we're going. But I always tell people I'm a Satanist, and they always say like, because not people know what Satanism is. They hear Satan and they think it's evil, and you're going to sacrifice goats and you want to kill babies and rape women. And the Church of Satanism is literally they're just doing it to kind of kick sand in faces, and their belief system is really just like treat people the way you want to be treated, and you'll be good. But they use the Satan imagery to be funny.
Well, that's funny that you say that because I was going to bring up the pentagram and how it, and something you said about Jesus is you referred to Jesus as the Son of God.
Yeah.
But he rarely did that. He
Yeah.
referred to himself as the Son of Man, and he was very adamant about that because he's like, I am a man. Yeah.
I
am a man, but I'm also I'm 100% man and I'm 100% divine, and I believe that the true Christian idea is that that is the archetype of every individual, that we are all 100% human, but we are also 100% divine. And we have the option to live in our humanity, which might look gross and egotistical, or we have a chance to live from our divinity, which means grace, mercy. And I mean, something I like to say to people who don't believe in God is like, well, then you're God. Act accordingly. How are you going to act?
That's what I tell people too.
Right,
They're
yeah.
like, well, who's your God? I'm like, me. And they're like, well, what kind of asshole are you? And I was like, hey, I hold myself to a high standard. Is that a bad way to think? Like,
Well, that's, I mean, okay, so the Buddhist belief that
you are your own temple.
Well, right, well, that's the Christian belief
Yeah.
as well. You know,
Yeah.
that like it's
There's so many similarities between every religion, yeah.
And
But
it's-
people latch on to the Jesus and God story, and they think nothing else outside that realm is real. And then I read a book called The Secret, but I know a lot of people are like, oh, that's just some weird hippie shit. But realistically, I feel that way. Like, and how you were saying there's a connection between being divine and being human. I feel like the human mind is very capable of doing amazing things. If you
look at everything that's being done, it only exists because of the human mind.
Exactly. So if you are willing, like if I truly feel, and this is where I like, and maybe The Secret is some hippie mumbo jumbo, but once again, if it helps me, then go for it. But for me, I think, all right, if I wake up every day and I tell myself, you are a piece of garbage, you're never going to amount to nothing, you'll never get nothing done, you're speaking that into existence, you're putting yourself in that mind frame, and nothing of that mind frame is ever going to get anything accomplished, unless you step in the biggest, luckiest pile of shit of all time. But if I wake up every day and say, you know what? I'm going to do something amazing with myself. I'm going to be positive. I'm going to carry myself in a positive light. Because the book, The Secret, isn't a big book. It's a very quick read. And pretty much what it tells you in essence is if you're going to work every day and someone's treating you terribly, or people in your life are saying you're a terrible person and everything in your life is negative, if you just work as hard as you possibly can to be positive, the universe will reward you with positive energy back. If you wake up every day saying, "I will be successful. I will make money. People will like me." Confidence exudes stuff, and honestly, since I've read that and I've kind of subscribed to it, I feel like people kind of. I found more like-minded people of my mindset because it's pretty much the law of attraction.
Sure.
I'm bringing other people around me that are also very positive people. And then there's people who are not so positive that see the way you carry yourself and say, well, how is he doing that? And I say, hey, man, I'm a positive dude, and I just try I try to think in this mindset. I don't say, hey, go read this book, this will help me, until later, and then I'll say, hey, this is what, you know what I mean? But I kind of give that message, which is the same as if I was going to give someone like, hey, go believe in Jesus Christ. Like I said, they're all very similar. But I'm a very big believer of the law of attraction. What you put in is what you'll get back. And every now and then there will be that time where it just doesn't work out for you. But you got to be patient. You got to keep at it, because if everything worked out to perfection right away and it worked immediately, then there would be nothing to work for.
I like the law of attraction to some degree. I guess I get scared the same way when I hear like prosperity gospel of like, if you do this, you'll get a car.
Yes.
You know? And there's a part of me that's like, I don't think that that's what this is about.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't really go for the materialistic things.
No, and
like I said,
I can definitely
if
tell
if I'm a good person, I will be rewarded with X amount of dollars. If that comes as a reward, then cool. But I'm more
That's
about
not why you're doing
I'm
it.
more about it for the peace of mind and to maybe help somebody else get to a better peace of mind. Because I was the type of person who struggled with the anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts. Like I never felt like I fit in. I never felt accepted. And a lot of people, when I tell that, they're like, that's not the persona you put off right now. And I'm like, because it took me a long time to get there. And I never took a medication. I never went to a therapist. I just kind of searched. I soul searched.
Yeah. Well, I think that's super important, is because, I mean, that's so many enlightened beings. They ask the question of, well, who are you? Who is the you that's all this, that's observing all this stuff, that's manifesting all these things? Is who is that, and why does it have such a strong desire to come out in art, in creative ways, and whatever it is? It wants to explore. It wants to be visible. You know, and I think it's. I guess so people used to ask me, like, I'm sure you've heard the saying, like, all roads lead to home when it comes to religions or whatever. And so people would ask me, like, do you believe all roads lead to home or lead to the same place or something? And the answer that I give for that is all roads lead somewhere. So no matter what road you're on, you're going somewhere. The question then is, where do you want to go?
Yeah.
Because, like, if you want to be, like, you like, as a human, your potential is infinite. To the best of it and to the worst of it. It's like, you want to be a rock star, you want to be partying, you want your albums to be #1, then that's the thing that, like, you got to go for that. But if you want to be a drug addict, if you want to, die young, not giving a fuck, that's an option too.
Yep.
It's totally up to you, And
I think some people too mistake religion for that. If you like, I don't mean to keep picking on Christianity, but that's just all the only thing I've ever experienced.
Sure, it's your culture's religion.
Yeah, where I went to church and I'm like, Tony, things aren't going your way, but if you pray enough, it will come to you. And I'm like, that's not how. And I even when I was in the church and I was trying to make a change and I was going through things, I was like, that's not the way it works. Like, I feel like you're being lazy. You're sitting back waiting for something to change for you by a higher power. You got to go do it.
That's exactly right. Because there's this verse in the Bible, and it's one of my favorite verses. I have imagery from that and surrounding scripture tattooed on my leg. But it's one of the lines is, seek first the kingdom of God and everything else will be given to you. And I think a lot of people read that and will be like, okay, so if I go to church, I'll get money or whatever. This, like, really just low-level interpretation of this verse.
You're being lazy.
Right. But how I read that is, okay, so I need to seek, that I need to put into action the exploration of the light. Let's put it in the most hippie way that we can do it, you know? And just being like, I'm going to aim at what I believe is the highest good for myself, for you, for this community, for any individual. And I think a lot of people say any individual until they do something that offends them. And then
you write them off.
Right, and that doesn't work.
Yeah.
That doesn't, like, I was saying to someone the other day that, and this is a problem with our current societies, that we don't have grace and we don't know how to enact that. That once someone fucks up, we send them to the outskirts of the camp and they're not allowed to come back in.
Yeah, and I think everyone should be given the opportunity to redeem themselves.
I totally agree. Well, because then what if you can't be redeemed? Then you're just
why have that person around?
Why consist?
And then we go back to being cannibal. We go back to being barbaric, and we say, "Oh, you commit a murder, then you have to die too."
Well, and also it's like, I think we then look at that person as someone that we could never be, when that's not true.
Yeah,
like you're what's that, the Joker's line of, like, you're one bad day away from being me.
Exactly.
And that's exactly
I love
right.
that quote. Yeah, Killing Joke.
Yeah. Okay. So that's
you're one bad day. Yeah, exactly. You could literally wake up tomorrow, and that's why I always try to bring, like, I always tell people, like people say, "Oh man, you don't want my story on your podcast." Yes, I do, because your story can turn around and someone could be like, "Holy shit!" Because we've all been or known someone who's been in a situation, because we've like, this area kind of culture, humans, society all tend to repeat themselves. You're not gonna you haven't done something that somebody else hasn't already done, and some people have come back from it and some people don't. But there's always that story and there's always that opportunity to do so. Like we were kind of talking about, like, and this might be super, I don't even know. Like, I always get uncomfortable bringing it up, but like, we treat murderers, like we can say, okay, we'll put somebody in jail for murder. But I feel like if we work with that person and we study that person, we can understand why they did what they've done.
Exactly.
But we say, okay, well, don't kill the murderer. Let's interview the murderer and let's find out why they do what they do. And you're still kind of humanizing them because you're like, why are they doing what they do? And then I think the same way about pedophilia. Now, people think, as soon as I hear that, they think that person should be murdered, they should be castrated, we shouldn't even talk to them. Why don't we study that? Because I think somewhere...
Because that's clearly a problem.
Yeah.
So it's like if...
And if
like,
we can study that and find out, there might be something that we can figure out to stop that.
And, well, this is... Okay, so this is the problem with, like, writing these people off as irredeemable is because then you make them subhuman.
Yes.
You make... Just being like, you no longer fit into the category of human. And that's... for a human, that's what can be more like, it's essentially saying you're a dog, you're whatever, you know, you're lower than what we are. And I shouldn't have to clarify myself that these acts that these people would hypothetically commit are wrong, but they're this, that could be you.
Yeah.
It's the same energy that floats over you, the same.
Somewhere the wires got crossed.
Well, that's okay. So how I'd like to play this little fun game in my head of like with people I'm similar with. You know those games at like carnivals or whatever where you drop in a marble and it bounces off a bunch of stuff.
Like a Plinko.
Yeah, and then it lands somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, I always wonder. It's like, okay, so here's just here's all potential human experience. You get dropped in here. How do you end up where you currently are?
Yeah, we're all just one giant game of Plinko.
That's it. We figured out the message of the universe.
But we're all a game from The Price is Right. No whammies. Oh. Fuck, my life is over.
Time to castrate my dog, I guess. But yeah, no, and so it's like there's nothing that's stopping you from being one of those people. And to separate yourself from them is you're lying to yourself first and foremost, and you're saying you're better than these people, which you're more than likely not.
Yeah,
you know.
I always look at, and it's not something I do joyfully, but it's something I always am mindful of, where you have someone who you've talked to for years, and they say, "Oh my God, this person down the street killed his wife, or cheated on his wife, or is a pedophile, or any of the most horrific, the taboo things."
Right, yeah.
And then, or they're addicted to heroin, or they're alcoholics, and and that person, they should be buried under the jail. And then you listen to that same person tell that and speak that mind, and then all of a sudden, an immediate member of their family is now in the same boat, and they're thinking, and they immediately go to, what can we do to help them?
Yeah. Johnny was always a good guy.
And then rest of the society is now looking at you the same way. You know what I mean? It's just like it's such a vicious cycle.
Right. And especially the fact that like even there's no one outside of those families. Okay, so let's bring it back. Theoretically, a healthy church should be those people that are bringing those people in and saying, well, there's something to be said that they're bringing them in subconsciously, but a healthy spiritual person should be able to go into that and be like, I'm going to love you unconditionally, because not doing that isn't going to help you.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing in the world, is because, well, and also I think this is super important, and you can't separate a person. You can't just lay every action a person's ever done on top of them and say that's who you are. Because you have to look at the core of who that person is. And for me, I believe that each individual, first and prime, is inherently and innately divine. And that's where I look at each and every person. And that's what I believe about you, about anyone watching, is at the core of who you are, you're divine. And then there's these other things that happen. And when I say other things, I don't just mean like life, your actions. I mean like your ego, who you think you are. That's still something that sits above your underlying divinity. And then so anything that flourishes out from there, if I'm this person, I do these things, that's not, for me, who you truly are, your truest self. And so how do we get you to get back to that place? What, how do we send the marble back up the Plinko thing to, whatever. I think that's, we enact that to some degree. Like I said earlier, I don't think that our culture is very good at grace at the moment, but we are clearly people who understand that the individual is divine, or else we wouldn't have communities for the LGBT or Black Lives Matter or anything like that. Those are, for me, there's statements that say you're a divine creature, you are the center of the universe to some degree, and we need to do everything we can to make sure that your life is proper. You know,
you're going to get the same
treatment
because
you're the same.
But here's a question, and this doesn't apply to either one of us, because we're just putting thought out there, because I feel like we're both open-minded to things. Now, I'm a supporter of the LGBTQ. I don't know. I don't know them all.
The LGBT plus community.
Right now, the transgender thing's a hot topic. I'm for it. You want to do what you want to do, do it. There's two things about it that concern me. And it's not, and I don't want people to hear this and think that I'm saying this from a hateful thing, because I think that happens a lot too, where people ask questions and then people are immediately thought as they're being hateful because they're asking those questions. You have to open the dialogue, because if you want anyone to understand what's going on and respect it and make it a thing, you got to be willing to have a conversation about it.
Right.
And if someone's...
And, like, if you're not allowed to answer the questions, then you're back to, like, a similar idea of just, like, we're kicking this kid out because he asked too many questions.
Exactly.
You know?
So the only two things that that kind of I question or I don't understand fully, or that concern me, is statistically the suicide rate for people that go through the surgery is very, very high. Now, suicide for me, like, I don't want anyone to leave this earth prematurely, especially when they just don't fit in, or they just mentally
they have potential to stay on.
Yes. So that concerns me. So I think anyone that's going through that process, yes, I think they should go through an evaluation at some point. I think they should have that conversation. I think they should really, really think about that, because regardless of what, I know the idea of it, and I could be completely wrong, but the idea is that that's the way they truly feel mentally. So they want to physically change that too, but like science and your body's chemistry
can
say something different. You know what I mean? And when you're a man and you try to chemically change yourself to be something you're not, your body reacts to that. Like a woman through pregnancy, they go through insane mental, physical, chemical changes, like postpartum depression, and where your mothers, like females kind of go crazy, and that's not a sexist thing to say. It's just,
can you imagine what you grew this thing inside of you?
Yeah.
Now you have to. There's literally, that's why it's called postpartum depression, because there's a separation, and that. I couldn't begin to fathom what that is,
and
like.
no one even understands that yet. We don't even understand a human body already, and we don't understand mental disabilities or mental disorders.
We don't understand the brain at all.
And now we're saying, like, now you're like, and I think it's a good thing that it's even out there, or something that should be talked about. But now you're like, I don't think a lot of people are coming from hatred. I think they come from confusion, and I think people hate what they don't understand. So when you're a woman or a man saying that you feel you're the other sex, and then someone's like, well, how does that happen? There's something wrong with you. The questions need to be answered. It's something, once again, that should be studied. I truly feel. I think it should be looked into.
Everything should be studied.
And then the only because the suicide rate, it does scare me. And then the other thing that it's a hot topic issue right now is when people that are transgender compete in sports.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah. I personally feel, and I'm not saying that someone's doing it to get an advantage, or they're doing it because they're like, oh man, I'm gonna go dominate. I don't think that's the case at all, and I hope that's not the case. But people are people, and human are human. But I don't care what you take. I just feel like I'm a big mixed martial arts fan, and there was a fighter. Now, regardless, that she lost. She had a fight recently where she lost, and that's cool. Like, that kind of shatters the whole thing.
It's the stigma.
But I mean, there was a lot of fights in between there where like people had broken skulls, broken orbitals, like, got really, really hurt. So that that's another thing I think that should be looked into as well.
Yeah.
And I think if we're going to be on a playing field, I'm also looking on the same token as women's rights, because now you're you're in the trans community. Do you want to be in the trans community? Do you want to be in the woman community? Do you want to be in the men community? Like,
right. Well, that's very hard because
there is no black and white.
Right.
And it's okay to be in the gray area, and that's where good, healthy dialogue can come from, where we can all learn. Yeah.
So I mean, that's an incredibly difficult thing to
and no one's going to have the answer right now.
Right.
It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen in a year.
I think
it's a growing process.
What I'll say is, like, I get worried about hot button politics or the fact that policies change so rapidly. I believe our system was set up in a way that it took time because it needed time in order for things to change.
We got to understand things.
Right.
Because if you change out the dot of a hat, then you look at an idiot going back 10 years later saying, ooh, remember when we changed that? That needs to be talked about. And then people get upset saying, like, oh my God, this is something that should be changed tomorrow. You got to look at it. Now, some things are a home run. They need to be changed.
Right, yeah.
And some things need time to be talked about.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, these hot topic issues are something that people think, I need to change tomorrow, but you can't. You can't.
Right.
It's got to be. You got to look into it.
I think what I would say first, foremost about transgenderism or whatever that would be is just that you have a responsibility to yourself to live up to who you believe you truly are, and however you want to manifest that without hurting yourself or others, then that's completely
100%
fine. And honestly, like, there's a part of me that's just like, I want to stop there. I have my thoughts about, like, MMA, and I've talked to people about that, but, like, the truest answer is, like, I don't do those things. I don't participate in sports, so it's like it's hard for me to, like, to see my opinion as one that could potentially be valid, because who the fuck are you?
Yeah,
you know,
no,
like,
I'm not saying anything I say here is valid and that's what we should go by.
Right.
But I'm just saying let's have an open conversation.
Right.
And I'm not coming from a hatred heart. Because I think a lot of people, they try to have those conversations. And listen, there's people out there that are very hateful of this. And there's some people who legit just want to have questions. You're like, well, you're transphobic. No, I just let's talk about it at least. Can we at least open the door to conversation? Yeah.
I dated an individual who is transgendered now. She was she then, and now he's he. And for me, I got to see what that was like for that individual at that time. And my only, I guess, response to it would be the same to any other person that's in a similar situation would be, or hopefully to approach that person with the same thing. It's like, I want you to just be okay.
Yeah.
You know, that's,
I hope
like, regardless of what that is.
I hope you love life.
That's exactly right. Like, I hope that when you wake up in the morning, you're stoked about whatever it is you're doing. So it's like, if you feel like you need, in order to get to that place, if you need to change your job, do it. If you need to change your friend group, do it. If you need to change your gender, do it. And there's obviously things that you want to walk along on that path. That's why these religions or spiritual teachings have practices, so that you're not just kind of falling off into wherever. So hopefully any individual who wants to live truly and freely will not only try to represent themselves the best they can, but also understand their place and who they are within kind of the larger community at large, something like that.
I'm just going to tell her real quick to turn the AC on. We're both sweating like crazy right now. So
I wore pants for some reason.
I would normally turn it on, but it's like, I don't want to. I think it's a really good conversation. I don't want to ruin it.
No, you're totally fine.
Yeah, and like for me personally, I remember not too long ago, I wasn't a hateful person. Like I said, I'm not. This never be me in general. But I remember I used words that I didn't think were hateful words. Like, I used to use and I'm not, once again, I'm just saying to say them just for the topic, but I used to use, like, gay, fag, like, they were, I used to call them their typical white boy words. You know what I mean? Like, that's what we, like, oh, dude's up, eat a fag. Like, you know what I mean? And then I got older, and then I, like, hey, don't be a retard, or, you know what I mean? Like that. And then I got older, I'm like, wow, they actually mean some things.
Right.
And they can be deemed as hateful words. And it's not that, like, and then I know some people hear that and they're like, oh, dude, you're going to conform to everything that people say. No, but if me nerfing the way I use a word doesn't hurt someone's feelings. I just don't want to be an asshole.
Yeah.
I'm not conforming.
Well, this is okay.
I just don't want to be a piece of shit person. Like,
this is something like I realized when like the whole bitch thing, like the bitch, it's cool to be a bitch culture.
Yeah.
Was kind of a thing.
It's cool to be an asshole nowadays.
Yeah, and like people that are just like, you know,
edgy.
And I'm just like, no, like how I always view this in my head is like, no, you're just deliberately disobeying your parents.
Yeah.
Because no one with a remotely healthy home was told, go out and be an asshole. Mm-hmm. And I understand that people have tragic backstories. I have my share and whatnot. But even in high school, you're told, don't be a dick.
Yeah.
This, like, be proper. Like, this is how you respect the other people around you. And then to, as an adult, to consciously do the opposite of that, you're just being an asshole.
Yeah.
And again, family trauma, whatever, obviously that plays a role. But
like the whole straight pride thing, you're just doing it to be a dick.
There's nothing there.
Like, you never woke up in one day and said, "Oh boy, I really hope when I walk out the door and hold my wife's hand and kiss her, people don't think I'm fucking weird." You've never experienced that, and that's why we celebrate something like Pride Month, because people can imagine if you couldn't express who you are.
Yeah.
That's fucking like. And then for people like, "Oh, glad the straight Pride Month was over." Why? Did it affect you at all?
Yeah, and it's. I don't know, it's just people getting bent out of shape because they want to be bent out of shape.
Yeah, they need something to complain about.
Yeah.
It sucks.
And I don't know, I guess those people aren't happy with their lives and that's why they want to do that or something like that.
That's literally what it boils down to.
You know, and you don't obviously want to be judgmental and say, like, clearly you're not happy, but, like, what does it matter to you what Tom and Dick do behind their doors? It's not affecting you at all.
And if you truly, and this is a thing too, if you really want conversation to happen about it, for me personally, if someone who was trans wanted to sit in this chair and we can have that conversation I just had, maybe I can get a better understanding. But if my approach to that person is, you're fucking weird and I don't like you and I hate you, we're never gonna meet in the middle.
Well,
because I'm coming at it already with a hateful mind and an understanding where I don't want to learn. Same with Christianity. If me and you were sitting down, if me and you were sitting down religiously, and I'm a devout atheist who hates everything that you believe, and you are like, hey, this is why I believe it. But if we immediately shut that door, we're never going to open that communication for each other, and it's just not healthy for people.
This is something I've said to somebody who, essentially, this is one of the first people to ever turn on me when I was like going through my crisis of faith and questioning everything. And I started to believe ultimately that all people go to heaven, or at least have a role to play in the cosmic whatever. And they laughed at me, and because they were very much in this Protestant worldview of some get saved, some go to hell. And he was very much just trying to put this gap in between us and say, you're that, I'm this. And what I said to him was, I want you to hand me your beliefs. Hand them to me right now. Give me them. Put them in your hands. You can't do it. Why should that affect this relationship?
Yeah.
You're literally taking something out of your brain and saying, you're a real person, I can touch you, but I'm not going to associate with you because of something that you have in your brain. So it's literally the farthest points.
And you're taking one of the biggest things your religion teaches you by judgment, and you're throwing it, you're using it, and it's, you're actually breaking even because that's a thing too that really upsets me with some Christians, is they're like, oh, I'm a Christian and I really don't like the whole gay thing, or people who love the same sex. Okay, were you ever married? Yes. Before you were married, did you have premarital sex? Well, yes. There's no ranking system in sin in the Bible. If you commit it, you commit it. So if you're if you're gonna latch on to the gay thing,
right,
you've probably committed 15 sins yourself, and you're doing it on a daily basis by judging those people. That if in reality, just because you go every Sunday, in your mind, you're both going to the same place. You're both gonna burn in hell.
Yeah,
in your mind, because that's the way you're perceiving it, and they don't want to hear that because, I think, like, for me personally, wherever I end up, if I go through my whole life and I don't believe that, and I my eyes close for the final time and I reopen and I'm at the gates and I'm like, I was wrong. At least I hope, for me personally, I've made enough positive impact and change on the world, and I'm not doing it for a spiritual thing. I'm just doing it because I want to be a good human. hey, when you get there, your bullshit little podcast, 14 people heard your story and they did something positive with it. You may not have believed what I believe in, but you followed my beliefs. Hey, welcome.
That's what I said earlier was, well, I mean, there's this great story in the Bible where Jesus is essentially, he's talking about himself as the judge, and he says like that all these people, they go out and do things in his name, but those aren't the people who get accepted in, because they're not actually going to the widow, the people in prison, the orphan,
the outcast,
or the outcast, the people who actually need. And what's super fascinating is that Jesus says, he's like, you didn't just do it to those people, you did it to me. So it's like you're turning your back on God. And again, so that's the fundamental principle of believing that each individual has that divine essence within them. And so, I mean, your normal run-of-the-mill Protestant Christianity, or Christian, doesn't have that as an axiom in their worldview. They don't understand that. What they understand is you're either saved or you're not saved. You're either going to hell or you're not. But the truth of the matter is, or at least from my perspective, is that each individual has that divine spark within them, and that is going to return back to its original essence upon death.
Yeah.
And that's, everything else will kind of burn away with it. And I don't know if I use the word burn intentionally there, but no, it'll just kind of fade away with it. Or I don't know. That's a whole other thing.
But society, and how you've been saying that scripture from the Bible, people latch onto that negative. Our media does it to this day. People in general, you can. The joke, there's always a joke. There's a joke where like, hey, you can build 1,000,000 bridges, but if you suck one penis, you're a dick sucker for life. And I know it's a funny joke and it's kind of homophobic. Sure. But on the same token, like you can be a firefighter and save 1,000,000 people, and you have one bad day and you snap and you kill someone, or you get behind the wheel of a car drunk and you make a bad decision and kill someone. It doesn't matter that you did 100,000 things good in your life. People are going to latch onto your one negative, and and then people want that to define you as a person, and it's kind of shitty.
Right. That's why I can't help but go back to just that idea that like we have to view people from that original essence and that core, or else we're not going to be able to. I always try
to look at people like for example, we were talking off camera, where every time I do an interview, someone approaches me and says, oh, you're going to do an interview with such and such, here's every negative thing I've ever heard about them. And I say, cool, I'm not interested in that. I'm only interested in the fact I want to learn about that person, and maybe that story comes up. I'm not going to fish for it, but if they tell that story and they're 100% truthful, and they tell why they've been down that path, and as you as a person who's been judging them for it, they've owned up to it. Move on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, okay. So like this is hard to talk about, just mostly because like I feel a lot of people could potentially get upset, but. A couple of years ago, an individual drove a car through he drove through a crowd, a bunch of people.
Served life in prison.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I know there's a bunch of people who were like, yes, this is awesome. And like, there's a part of me that's just like, well, yeah, maybe that's, I mean, he killed somebody and he injured a bunch of people, so he's probably not the best person to have out in public, granted. Yep. Does that person have the right to grow and change and do better in the world?
Sure.
My hope is that that's what we would believe.
Yeah, I think life and parole is a very steep. Now, if he
because he's 22, dude. Imagine, like, because this is what I couldn't get out of my head. It had nothing to do with the acts that he did. Yes. It was the fact that a 22-year-old kid
who's probably raised in hate his whole life
is sent away for forever now.
Yes.
And there's people applauding that. And again, I understand why you're doing that, and I can get behind that too.
You're not supporting his actions. You're supporting, hey, you're supporting his salvation as a human. Or like, that's my thing with prison too. I say, you know what? Turn around and tell someone, hey, you're going to jail for life, right? I'm going to grant you parole every 4 years. If you physically go to jail and you can show me you're making a positive impact, and I think there's certain situations I know where they try to do it within prison, where they say, hey, like, prisoners, we're going to give you a little more freedom and we're going to let you do some things.
Mm-hmm.
But I also feel like prisoners shouldn't be grouped in the same people together.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, that guy is a murderer, but should he go to jail with
all the other murderers?
With every, like, I think, yes, at first maybe he should.
Mm-hmm.
But then you're like, okay, he's genuinely sorrow for his actions. And if he's not, then okay, then you won. Your system has been proven to work.
Mm-hmm.
But I think everyone should be given the opportunity to make a change.
Right.
And if they come out and make the change again, if they come out like, no, you let that guy out in 5 years, and he turns around, does it again, and I know the other side of the coin will be like, well, if we wouldn't have let him out, he wouldn't have done it again.
Yeah. And that's a valid point. Like,
it is.
You're like, because the proof is in the pudding. You're like, yeah, apparently you were right.
But
I guess the hope is that there would be some sort of redemption.
Yeah.
Because I'd lean towards that heavily. Because I guess there's a part of me that thinks this thought. Hopefully that part of me that thinks that is my brain.
Yeah.
Not like some spirit.
Yeah.
But oh man, I lost it. In order for the universe to be just, then everyone not only has a chance at redemption, but everyone is redeemed.
Yeah.
And I believe that, and I think this is my high hopes, my high faith in whatever's happening here is that, and again, this is me like super optimistic about this, of being like everything that's ever happened, every word, every action, everything, it all exists within this beautiful creation. It's being redeemed. It's being utilized in a way that we couldn't even possibly understand. And that's what I hope for. And that's how I look at the world, and I see that these terrible things that have not only happened to these people I don't know, but also horrible things have happened to me, and I'm sure you, and
everyone has a story.
Yeah, so it's like...
That's why I started this.
I believe that those things, either if it's going on a podcast and telling your story and giving someone hope or whatever it is, somehow that's going to be used for light, you know?
It's just crazy. We've been here for an hour and almost over 45 minutes. Like, what section, like, here's what annoys me about the internet. Like, what section of our conversation would you edit out? I wouldn't edit any of it out. I think it's a great conversation, and I think I think it'd be entertaining for someone to listen to.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I'm saying, like, when people talk about, like, it's just media, like, this is, I don't know, beautiful. But I want to go back to something real quick. So, you do your travel, and you come back. You're starting Churches and Trains. The meaning behind that name.
This is exciting because I never really get to talk about this in public, and no one really asked me about it ever.
Because now I learn a little bit about you and your beliefs and where you've been. And
well, you'll understand this the second that I say it. So it's actually lyrics from a song. The song is called Amsterdam by Gregory Alan Isakov. If you haven't heard him, go listen to him. He's phenomenal. And I hope he doesn't mind me using his lyrics and making a small amount of money off of them.
Yeah.
But
I'm sure he'd be flattered. And if he isn't, then that sucks.
Yeah. But so the lyrics are churches and trains, they all look the same to me now. Shoot you someplace while we aim to come home somehow. And for me, that's just always been it.
How do you boil that lyric down?
We're all trying to get home.
Whether it be transportation or whether it be spiritually?
A contentment of the soul. And I think...
That's what I figured, but I just wanted to...
Yeah. And like, because that's, for me, that's me personally.
Would you rank that really high in like your all-time favorite lyrics?
It would be up there.
Yeah.
I mean, I named a thing out of it. I have this too. It's a tattoo. It's a church and a train. So
nice.
it really means a lot to me. Just mostly because those two ideas have embodied the majority of my life.
Yeah.
I've been spiritual since I was 17. I'm 29 now. I mean, spiritual is such a hard thing. I've been devoted to the spiritual practice for over 10 years now. I've been traveling since I was 19. I lived in a different country. I've been to almost 10 different countries, and I've traveled the States a fair bit, and so it's just that just always summed it up for me, because I always knew that those two things were kind of overlapped a little bit.
Yeah.
And my whole moving to Oregon was, the number one reason was I needed to figure out what I had a question in my head, and I needed to figure out the answer, and the question was, what is God? And I went out to Oregon to try to figure that out. That's all I did. It was a crazy time, man, because I I'll say, like, if I was awake from 8 in the morning until 10 at night, only 2 hours of those days was spent on something that wasn't either chanting, meditating, reading a philosophy book, reading a holy book from God knows where. And that was really important for me to just, like, because I needed to leave behind all the voices that were like, you're wasting your time, this doesn't matter. I was super devoted to Christianity, and then that fell through for me, and I needed a connection back to that. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I found that when I was out, I put churches and trains on hold for a year, because I'm like, that stuff doesn't matter if I can't kind of figure out this other stuff.
Yeah. I know a lot of people get upset with, and I'm sure people typecast you and put you in a type of group of people, and I admire that. Like, me personally, I try to come off like, I love my punk rock, and I try to come off as punk as I possibly. Like, people like, yo, why don't you promote your show? And I kind of punk rock promote it, but I kind of do it through social media, like, you know what I mean? But I realistically, if I wanted to pursue a dream, I couldn't. Because I need to make X amount of dollars to pay bills. And I think people who live in means that they don't necessarily outstretch, and they can work in a smaller job that people were like, that's not a real job, but you're still pursuing your craft. I'm kind of jealous of that. Like, I think that's a cool thing. And people were like, oh, when are you going to grow up and get a real job? Like, just because society tells you you're not successful if you're making X amount of dollars, happiness is super important.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because you got to live with yourself.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so I saw this status the other day, and someone was like, I don't understand how people who don't work full-time jobs can function. I work a full-time job, and I'm, up to my eyeballs in bills or whatever. And I'm like, I haven't worked full-time in 2 years. I actually took most of 2018 off. I was unemployed from May of 2018 until December of 2018. I was just doing things, and I was living off of saved money. So when I was out in Oregon, I was working part-time as a janitor. So, like, anyone could look at just that and just be like, well, you're 27 and that's how you're living your life. But at the same time, I'm writing a book, I'm dialoguing all these deep thoughts that need to be processed with people. I'm working on my music and doing these things that are more important to me. I don't care if people look at me and say, you're 29, you're a part-time barista, but I'm like, yeah, but I'm doing the things that I want to do. When I wake up in the morning, I get to choose what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I can't beat that.
I always kind of, this might seem stupid, but there's a Dane Cook skit he did where he said, I want to leave a legacy. And his like, there's a kid eating an ice cream cone in a park, and I walk up and smash the ice cream cone in his face, and I look at him and say, you'll remember me for fucking ever. Realistically, you've left a legacy. And I kind of took his joke, and I said, you know what, it's kind of true. And I kind of took it, like, I know that's a joke, but you can leave a legacy no matter, like, you could wake up tomorrow, the second you walk out your door, the first person you interact with, you can leave a lasting impression on that person and change them for the better or the good. People who are racist, people who are anti-something, they stem from a story. What are they stem from a belief. So this is just the Plinko ball, right? So I'm a black man. I'm not. Blackwell's in my name, but I'm not. I'm a black well, but not a black man. Nice. I walk out the door. I walk up to, I'm having a bad day. My bills aren't paid. I'm broke. I'm depressed. I have anxiety. I hate the world. And I'm not saying this isn't all. I'm just putting a scenario out there. And I walk down the street, and I walk up to the first person I see, and for some reason, that person gives me shit. And I'm 18, 19 years old. Back then, for me, I'll take a swing at somebody. I don't care. I hit that person. That person then goes on their whole life like, I was just minding all my own business, and I was hit by a black guy. I hate all black people. That person turns around and has 4 kids. He raises all 4 kids that hate black people. Yeah. You have just you just left a legacy that's going to impact the world.
Yeah. And that's
or you can walk out the door, and that person can already have that state of mind. And they're in a horrible car accident, and their car is about to blow up and it's on fire, and most people pull their phones out and they record it, and they're like, this guy's going to get blown up in his car. But you decide you're going to be different, and you're going to crawl in there and you're going to pull that person out and save their life. You don't know that person hates your guts because the color of your skin.
Yeah.
You pull him out, you pull him to safety, his car explodes. He's going home to his four kids that he just raised his entire life to be completely racist, and now he has to go home and explain to him that a black man just... The reason I'm home today is because someone... You can make an impact any way you possibly can.
Yeah. I think that's... Well, okay, so something... I think I played this song when I was there. Michigan was the one where everyone sings at the end. It was would be the last song I played. And the whole point of... The first line of that song is... So what shall we make now that this is done? So it was about I was dating this girl who was an artist, and we broke up. And so it's like, okay, well, now what? Now, I have an option to either just be pissy, just hate her, do whatever, or I have an opportunity to take what has just been, for lack of a better term, gifted to me, and hopefully bring that into something that can be cathartic for people, that they find some sort of peace in it, and that they can see that there's hope. And that's always been like, I'm not very much, I don't know, I don't talk about hope a lot like in my personal life, but like in a lot of my music or poetry or whatever, that's something I fall back on a lot, is because I don't know, maybe there's just a part of my brain that just sees it and just understands that there is hope. And that there is a chance for redemption or whatever it is. But, I just can't seem to
That's just something that I try to do, especially now that I'm trying to put myself out there, out there more, especially with this podcast. I'm like I said, I when I go out and I'm in public, sometimes I cut loose and have a couple beers and I act like a fun. People think I'm probably a drunk idiot. When I go see a band, I like to have fun. I like to sing, dance, and if I'm doing it, I know somebody else will if they think I'm drunk while I'm doing it, then it's cool. Right. If that opens you up more to come and dance for that band, it makes the artist feel good. But I always just try to carry myself in a standard where hey, he was a cool person. Maybe I'll give his I'll support what he's into more because I've learned more about him. And that's a huge reason why I was like, man, I want people to tell their stories. But then I'm like, I can take that whole thing as well. Like, I'm very influenced by I have two influences, and I think they're both polar opposites of people. But I think they both have. You boil them down. I'm a huge. Well, if you had to say, who do you think my influences are?
I'm gonna say Joe Rogan was probably one of them.
Yeah, he's one. Yep.
And Vince McMahon.
No. God damn it! No, he's also a person who used his voice. I'm a huge Howard Stern fan.
Okay.
Because I think both of those people interview two different types of people, but at the end of their interview, even if you walked into that interview, for example, Howard Stern can interview, he interviewed Miley Cyrus one time, and I was in my car, and it was going to be a nice long drive, and I was like, do I want to fucking listen to an interview with fucking Miley Cyrus? I don't like Miley Cyrus. Only because I've watched so many things on the internet where people use her as a meme and degraded her and I was told by people that I should hate this person. And I bought it. I bought a hook, line, and sinker. I was a sheep. And I was like, you know what? And I never listened to her music because I'm a rock guy and I like this and I'm not listening to that pop shit. And I sat and listened to Miley Cyrus's interview and I went, holy fucking shit. She was a girl who was raised by a guy who wrote one of the biggest hit songs of his whole life, produced songs for a lot of people after that because people thought he was a joke, but still made his money and found a way to provide for his family. Enough that his daughter became a Disney star, or Nickelodeon, whatever she was, and then her whole life she had to be someone she wasn't. So people joked around like, oh, she's the Hannah Montana Miley. Yeah, that was legit her life. She had to be someone she wasn't. And she was, if you want to call her a hippie, she was a hippie. She wanted to experiment. She wanted to live her life. She wanted to go through things that most teenagers do, but because she's a celebrity, she's not allowed to do that. And I was like, you know what? Fucking hell yeah. Even with Justin Bieber, that kid was 13 years old and his net worth was higher than anyone in our entire county's ever going to see. And you expect him to go, you know what I mean? And you expect him to go through his entire teenage life where most people are assholes and scumbags, and you're expecting him not to be, and he's worth triple the money? When I was a kid, kid, if you gave me $50 and told me to go to the candy store, I'm going to ball out. That kid was 13 and he was worth billions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, well, I don't know. It's the getting caught in the drama of it all,
Yeah.
right? Because you're just like, well, now that I've stepped into, I'm a punk rocker, I can no longer do this.
Yeah, and I hate that.
Like, yeah, me too, because I'm just like, why? That's so limiting. Like, and I don't know.
It's cool to be influenced, and it's cool.
And it's cool to even have like your style in a genre or whatever, you know, because it's a tribe. It's something that's close to home, but you have to understand that people are allowed to have whatever they want as their tribe.
Yeah,
you know.
And then so when I listened to those interviews by these two people, and I'm like, holy shit! And by the end of the interview, I'm like, you know what? And I turned off the interview, and I literally went to Spotify, and I clicked Miley Cyrus, and I hit shuffle play, and then I listened to her lyrics. I can't play a guitar to save my life. I can't.
Me neither.
I can't sing to save my life.
Again, me neither. Don't feel bad.
But I wish I can sing because I can retain lyrics like nobody's business. Like if you're like, hey Tony, let's go karaoke. If I get drunk enough and I have the balls, I'll probably do it, and I won't be horrible. Like I listen to the people, I'm like, all right, as long as I don't try to sing and I like just go up and have fun, I can hit the lyrics and I can keep a flow and I have all right timing.
Sure.
But I latch on the lyrics. So then I hear someone's story, and then I go back and I'm more inclined to support that person in their craft, in their artistry, because I've learned more about them. So my theory to that, when I started this, and I was like, okay, I want people to come on and tell their stories, because I think there's a lot of good stories that people can learn from our area and help themselves. We talked about depression, we talked about suicide, we talked about drug addiction, heroin addiction, the whole nine. And then I was like, okay, I'm in a slump right now where people don't want to tell their stories, which I completely understand because it's very hard to do that. And a lot, and when people are like, hey, and I know people have amazing stories, but I would never approach someone and be like, hey, I know you went through something, because I don't want to cash in on your your negativity, but I think your story would help somebody. And then I don't approach people like that. I just don't do it. So if they approach me and I say, like when you approached me, I had no idea what we were going to talk about. And I just said, you know, whatever you're comfortable, we'll do. But I truly feel like if someone sat and put the time in to listen to this 2-hour interview, I honestly think if someone says Churches and Strange is playing at this venue after they took 2 hours, because me personally, if I listened to this, I'd be latched within the first 13 minutes and I would want to listen to it all. Yeah. And I'd be more inclined to go support you as a person because I learned more about you. Like it happened to a lot of people. Like I had this Meg on, and Meg told a very deep story. And people go up to Meg and be like, I heard your thing, and I like thank you for doing that. And if you can do that for a musician or an artist or someone or a local business, it's only going to help. Yeah, because you're making that intimate connection.
And I think what's important is that you're empowering the individual, and there's nothing really more important than that. Is just to say that you can do it, whatever it is, you can do it. And also this isn't my idea, but the fact that we all say you can live up to your potential. I'll say that to you. I have no idea what your potential is. Like not even the slightest, but you do. To some degree, it's a foggy idea in the back of your mind, but it's something that definitely exists as a possibility. Yeah. And I don't know. There's just this deep sense within me that the individual matters and their stories matter and how they move through life matters as well. And I don't know like cosmologically what that means, like how do our stories affect the universe. I have no idea, but I know that it affects this, and that's way more tangible and closer than the infinite. And
the reason I'm like, well, all right, I can make this just an audio only podcast, but realistically, if this was only audio, I don't think that many people listen. I have a consistent 7 people who listen to every audio I put out there. And I'm grateful for those 7 people. It's not a huge number, but when I upload something to YouTube, I average about 30 to, I mean, I've had interviews that went 30. I had interviews that had 575 people watch. Yeah. It really varies. But if those 10 people that listen to every single show get something out of it, then cool. Yeah. I love it. But you can sit there and say our area is terrible, and you can say that I hate it, but if you're not willing to make a change, then what are you doing? You're just complaining. Right. It just, I don't know, trying to leave that legacy.
There's this Jewish saying that is, I think it's good. It's, any old donkey can tear down a barn. It takes a special donkey to build one.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's like you can shit on Schuylkill County all you want, and most of your points will be pretty valid. But guess what? You live here, fucker. This is your home.
Yeah, I don't see you moving.
Right. So it's like if this would be idiotic if you came into my house and you saw how terrible it was, and then I blamed either my neighbor or my landlord. You know, it's not his fault.
Yeah.
I'm living there, you know? So I think that there's a huge responsibility on the individual to make their home something of worthwhile, you know? Actually,
I honestly think there's a lot of things in Schuylkill County, in our area, Luzerne, everything, Carbon County. I think there's awesome things out there that a lot of people take for granted. And there's a lot of really talented people that we don't know about, and that's all that's the main thing. I'm like, I want to put that out there, because I think when people look at like, hey, Tim's gonna be on YouTube, some people are like, oh, cool, another fucking podcast, you know, two people thinking their ideas are super important that people should listen to, and I get that, and that's just you boiling down to something that you think you're making. Anything can sound stupid if you make it if you want to, but there's some people that are like, I wonder what Tim's doing on YouTube, and then they go and listen to it, and you make the everyday person seem like they're more than they are. And if that's what it takes for someone to listen and and want to make a change and do something positive, then cool. But at the end of the day, we're everyday people. Yeah.
Is that how you? That sounded like a good sound off for
No, not at all.
No,
but that's just that's my way of. That's why the only thing I would have changed with the name of the show is I wouldn't have had it interviews. In retrospect, I would have had it conversations. I would have named it Conversations with Everyday People.
Yeah.
Because I don't feel like I'm interviewing. I mean, realistically, I probably am, but I want my interview to be more like a conversation. Yeah. And this is something I would do even if there was no microphones on. I'm just super interested in meeting people and talking.
Well, that's what I said to you before we got into this. Was I'm really excited to talk to you just because you look like someone who actually wants to talk. You know, I had this experience one time, and this was so upsetting. It was when I was, well, let's not quantify it because I don't want anyone to hear the story.
Yeah.
But I had a really impactful worship night at church, and it was just one of those moments where it's you're kind of what's happening? Everything, I feel really good. I feel like I interacted with something higher than myself, and I don't understand this. And I went out to dinner with several of the people that were in that same service, and no one talked about the service at all. And I'm just like, guys, can we just talk about the fact that we were just swept up into something very beautiful? I don't know what it is. I mean, we can quantify it however you want, but the fact that we're not talking about it, and we're talking about season 2 of Stranger Things or whatever, and that's fine and that's wonderful, but there's some depth to the human existence and the human experience that people just don't want to talk about. And I'm all about talking about it because I'm
do you think maybe those people were just going through the motions where you actually got something out of it?
Yeah, and well, I mean, there's a whole backstory of just for a long time people just didn't want to talk theology around me, especially if they were mainstream Christians.
A lot of people here, I guess you would say middle of the road conversation. Even we talk some of the topics we talked about today, politic wise. There's probably someone who's listening fuck those guys, I'm turning off. Everything's a fucking fairy tale to them. That's not the real world. Why can't it be?
Yeah. Well, it's also, I mean, what is real, what is truth, and those are incredibly hard questions to answer.
Just because you gave something a name doesn't mean that's what it is.
Yeah. Well, gosh, I don't know, man. I think something that we keep repeating is this idea of don't judge. You know, it's you're seeing all these other people out there, and this is actually funny. I got this from somebody one time, and it was one of the most profound things that this person ever said to me, and I kept it with me, and I was complaining about someone who was commenting on a status that I put. So I put up this opinion, someone disagreed with it, and there was tension.
And then it started a whole shit show.
Right. And
you know what I do? I used to be the person who, I seen a post today, and if they ever do watch, they're going to know exactly who they are, because we're still friends, and we've had conversations, and we both strongly disagree, but he was the post that said, I'm glad that shit straight Pride Month is over. Now I guess all those businesses and people who put that rainbow on, I guess they're back to being straight again.
Yeah.
My podcast used I've supported Pride Month. Doesn't mean I'm gay, but I'm just showing support to it.
Right, and you're not trying to capitalize off of it. You're just showing support.
I'm showing support.
Right.
And if it bothered you that much that you had to make that your profile picture, like your profile status today, people only do that so someone comments so they can start that negativity. And I read it and I wanted to be like, I just wanted to put like, oh cool bro, you're so edgy, thank you for being you.
Yeah.
But I was like, you know what?
Nah,
I'm
don't need to
scroll
engage
right past it.
Right. Well, the thing that she said to me was essentially that in spirit was, don't let them ruin your garden.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, so your goal, my goal, your goal is to learn to cultivate this inner peace, is to learn to figure out how do I walk in harmony with myself, with my neighbors, with my community at large. How do I tend that garden? And then you have idiots who, I mean, you brought on yourself, like I did. You know, I'll admit that I was like, I'm going to put out something edgy, and it'll get an edgy response, and then I'll be upset. And it's like, well, like, you're the one that's ruining your own garden, but you also have to let you can't let these other people and their opinions ruin. Because, okay, so here's the thing, is I think we can sit here and we can say that it's, you know, you have to love everybody and whatever, and I think that's very important, but you also have to be able to love yourself regardless of if these people fall in line or not.
Yeah.
Because not everyone's going to love you.
Yeah.
Not everyone that listens to this, like, and because
people will watch something to shit on it.
Yeah, and like, and that's a whole other issue of like why they're doing that, and it's like, but I think it's, I don't know, it's you can't be looking to be that person or to try to do that. Because if even if your intentions are good to some degree and you just keep pushing people's buttons, then you're just going to upset people. And I think the problem with social media, especially at this point after the last election, is everyone now is just kind of screaming into the tunnel. Yeah. Because the echo chamber. You're only getting back because everyone who's anti-Trump deleted everyone who's anti-Trump, or vice versa, or whatever, you know? So now you're just kind of at this place where you're just screaming into the void. And so I put up this Facebook status the other day, and it was, if you're into philosophy, theology, or social justice, make sure you actually leave something behind other than a couple Facebook statuses. Because that's not going to matter. Yeah. Like, I could go and put this most profound thing that I could think about online, or like the edgiest post I could think about while shitting on, like, you know, racists or homophobics or whatever. But if I'm not actually going and living a life where those people that, you know, the oppressed get to flourish, or I'm actually doing something that will have a legacy behind it, then it doesn't matter. Yeah. Like, it doesn't matter. No. You know? Like, and this is, okay, so I had this talk with a pastor recently, is there's this verse where Jesus says, what is it to you if you love those who love you? What does that matter? You're not doing anything. It's just the natural ebb and flow of how life works. You're loving the people that love you. That you're not going to win a trophy for that. Yep. You're going to win a trophy for loving the people who hate you. You're going to win by being meek and taking on these things. Yeah,
the old me, I would have a confrontation with somebody, and I would argue, and I would get angry, and I would get into a screaming match, and I would work myself up, and I would at the end of the day I'd be like, yeah, and then I'd just sit out. I would end that conversation or that text message or that Facebook post or that MySpace post, and I would and the whole time I'm going about my day, but I'm thinking, that asshole Tim that I just fought with on Facebook, and I'm like, why even waste that energy? Why? It means nothing. So I recently kind of just got caught up in a little bit of that, and I was like, and then after it was over, I was like, why did I do that? Like, that's not who I am as a person, and right. And that's where I felt like the universe thing, where I was like, the law of attraction. I welcome negativity in, and now negativity is following me. If I would have never just even engaged that and just moved on, probably the situation would have seen me handle it in a more positive light and a respectful light, and maybe I could have changed that situation in a better way, but I just fed into it being I fed into it on the easier path, because every situation you walk into has a negative side of it and a positive side, and 9 times out of 10 the negative side is the easier path to walk, and sometimes it's the most satisfying, because the human interaction to you is the animalistic side, where I want to fight and I want to get angry and I want to show those emotions and I want to show that I'm dominant and I want to be alpha male. And then there's the positive side, where you kind of have to humble yourself and show maybe show yourself as a little weaker in perception, but to you, you're the stronger person for doing it. And you're going to confuse that negative person who wants to feed into it, because they're like, why the fuck are they getting angry? And that's where the change happens. That person says, why are they not getting angry? Why are they not feeding into my nonsense? Why are they not... I'm giving them all the bait, they're not biting.
And that'll blow someone's mind if you do that properly, because I mean, I subscribe very strongly to the idea that our subconscious minds run our bodies probably a lot more than our conscious minds. So some dick who's out there trying to fight is doing it at some subconscious level because he needs something to be satisfied, and then he's not getting that, and hopefully that'll make him question his actions, his axioms, why he's
It's easier to go through life as just a complete tornado and tear everything down and break all relationships and burn all bridges and to be just completely destructive, negative, hateful. That's the easier path to walk in life. It takes nothing to do that. It takes zero energy. But now stop your tornado and try to rebuild it and put the pieces together and rebuild your bridges and change the perception that everyone thought of you as being that person. It's a lot of work. And some people are willing to walk that path and make it work and have that redemption. And then some people they look at the destruction they caused and say, not worth it. I'll just continue being a dickhead. And that's the fork in your road.
Right. And that's kind of going back to what we talked about earlier, is that just your choice to be an asshole. Yeah. And like I said then, it's obviously there's the reason that you're doing that is an echo from something, but you, to some degree, have control over the ship, so try to aim it in a proper way that benefits everybody. And I don't know. I guess it just has to come from a really hurt and broken place that you would want other people to be there. And I've been there. I don't know if hopefully I haven't tried to bring people into that so much. But misery loves company.
Yep.
You know?
So we were talking earlier, trying to get closer to wrapping up here, unless there's anything else that we missed. But
I'd like to talk about this a little bit more, if that's
100%.
possible.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is there? Now, you said before that everyone has their own their full potential. What are some things that you are trying to accomplish, trying to get out there, trying to do with yourself?
That's a good question.
What are your recent goals, with your music or your book or your personal life?
That's a good question. I think something that I would, and this kind of goes back to just talking about the purpose behind my music, is that I want people to know that their life has great purpose behind it.
You gotta get on Spotify, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. I don't know how that happens or how it works.
This is just me going back to thinking no one likes my music or anything. I'm the worst promoter for myself.
When people tell me hey, go listen, you're on SoundCloud, right?
Yeah. SoundCloud and Bandcamp.
Yeah, I don't know what Bandcamp is, but
Bandcamp's just a downloading site that you can just get out.
SoundCloud's hard to use, and it's not user friendly. Spotify, I could Mahatango.
No, that's great.
Play.
Well, again, like I said, it's just me being I don't think anyone wants to listen to these things. I know, and it's me being wrong. Okay, so whenever someone comes up to me after a show and tells me they like my music, I'm just, the first thought that runs through my head is, you're wrong.
Yeah.
And
really,
so, yeah.
Wow, because you're super optimistic about that. You immediately go right to that spot.
Yeah, I'm not naturally that way. I've gotten this way through practice.
Someone says, "Hey, I listened to your podcast with this person." I literally go, "Holy shit!"
Yeah,
it's more of a shock.
Well, right.
Thank you for taking time out to do that.
The first time I ever had someone come up to me at a show, just being I'm here solely because I wanted to hear your music, and I'm just I don't. What? Yeah. I wanted to. Okay, so there was this time I played the show. Can't remember where. It was outside of Philly, and a guy came up to me after I was done my set and said, "The only reason I came here is because I saw you I just saw your name on the billboard or whatever, looked you up, liked your music, and came, and I just wanted to see you.
I like people who take that workout.
My instinct was, I'm going to give you $5. Because I'm just like, I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
Because I never expected anyone to do that.
I'm a hugger.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I am too.
Yeah.
But
I creep people out, I think, sometimes.
yeah.
Because like when I meet someone and they're like, hey, I'm like, I'm Tony, and then I go, like, I don't know, because I maybe it's because I just never felt accepted, and then and now I'm just like, a hug for me goes a long way. I don't know.
It's a good thing. I mean, it's one of our weird, like, culturistic things that we do. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's a human universal to embrace.
Yeah.
You know?
I think handshakes are good. But like for example,
I'm definitely a hug guy.
yeah, I'm a hug guy too.
I don't think we hugged coming in.
I don't know, because sometimes I get really weird doing it with some people, and then like I don't want to be weird. Like
Sure.
I'll hug you when we leave.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
We should hug on camera.
Yeah.
Just to make sure everyone knows.
But like, I know we just lost him in passing, but like, kind of go into that social status where people see other people and they're like, oh man, he's a rich person, or he's worth a lot of money, and da 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 da. The first time I ever met Pat Murphy, hug. Hug right off the bat. Didn't know him from Adam. I didn't know who Pat Murphy was. I don't buy jewelry. I don't like. You know what I mean? He was a guy in Maz's, and I was a Redskins fan in an Eagles bar, and people were heckling me and fun.
Sure.
And I met Pat, and I met him through the boys upstairs. And every single time I ever met him, he's just been a complete sweetheart of a person. I love that man to death, and it devastated me when I found out that we lost him.
His son Sean Murphy comes into our coffee shop every day, and he's a phenomenal human
I've never
being.
met Sean.
He's wonderful.
Yeah,
he's one of the sweetest.
If he's anything like his father when it comes to just being a good human, and even that whole thing when he passed, and everyone immediately looked at that negative thing, and everyone's like, well, what if, why this, why, fuck that, why? We just lost a good person.
Right. We just lost a spark of divinity, you know?
And realistically, and I'm not even going to feed into, like, the whys, or, you know what I mean? But, like, anyone can get drunk on a weekend and go and do something that they're maybe not proud of. Yeah. But do they deserve to die for it? No. Not at all. And you're gonna erase everything good he's ever done because of that one negative? That's not fair. Like, I'm a nobody. I'm a poor scumbag kid from Monty City, and he would accept me because through mutual friends. He accepted me like I was just a normal everyday person, and we could have a beer together, and it wasn't a handshake, it was a hug. Like, he was a good dude, man. Like that's an impression on me. Like, if we just walk up like, oh, hi. Yeah. A formal handshake is cool. I'm with it. But if someone's first instinct is like, hey, I'm like, ooh.
Yeah. Well, because they see you kind of as a person, not like an interaction or something like that. Yeah, I like that. Guess.
It means a lot to me. But But anyway, your music and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'll try to limit the tangents and like.
Oh no, it's totally fine, man. I guess I don't know. I think it's like going back to your question of just like what am I trying to do or any of these things. I know I'm working somehow to try to get like a philosophy and theology series going or something like that, like shorter, and because when was the last time anyone read a book?
It's tough.
And that's like, and so I'm like, I'm gonna write books, and then it's just like, well, no one's gonna read them, and because
people like podcasts, right?
And like, so like people aren't reading philosophy books. Only like loser idiots like me are.
For me, that's where the podcast fell in. I'll look at a podcast that's like, this is about spirituality, or this is about government, or this is, and I'm like, okay, I'm not really adept to that. I'll listen to someone talk about it for 2 hours in a car, or like I'll get an audio book because I just can't sit still to read something.
I think there's something to be said that the spoken word is more powerful and more accessible to the average person than a book. Yeah. And I think that's just something that I'm going to have to work with in my kind of line of field, or my line of work. And so I'm working on something like that. I want to do something shorter and a little bit more like accessible, but it's hard because I don't really have an audience at the moment, so it's hard to, because usually you try to do things with your audience in mind, especially like writing a book or something. You want to know who you're writing it for, and at the moment, I don't. That's kind of blurry for me, so I kind of have a hard time directing that.
And who am I? I don't know anything. Like, when I make my podcast, I make it for me
Mm-hmm.
because I hope that it's going to help somebody else. So maybe it's just like write it for yourself.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And if you're a genuine person and people subscribe to what you do as a person or subscribe to you as a person, they'll support it.
Right. And there's also the idea of just make something good, and people will like it or they won't. And the people who don't like it, that's fine. Like, they're not wrong.
Yeah.
Like, people who don't like my music, they just don't like my music or my poetry. Like, that doesn't
Put this up here.
doesn't matter, you know?
So how did this book come about?
So, okay, so it was similar to the Oregon thing of just being like, one day I would like to write a book of poetry. And again, one day's not just going to happen. Like, I'm not just going to wake up one morning and now it's like, oh, I have a poetry book.
Yeah.
You know?
It's already written and sitting on my bedside.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, I had to be like, okay, let's start. So what I did was just collect together every poem of mine that I could find. And I put them onto a document and either shifted them around, because there's a slight narrative to the book. The book's broken down. Oops.
You're good.
The book is called Voyage to Leave to Return, and it's broken down into two sections, to the leaving and the returning. And so I tried to find the poems that were fit within either one of those categories, and then...
So you've always been writing poems. That's kind of been your thing. So like have you been doing this since high school?
Since middle school.
So you're what you're saying is you took, how we talked about a little bit, you graduated high school, you went and lived in another country, you've traveled different countries. We didn't really dive into everywhere you've been and traveled.
I can knock that out pretty quick.
Yeah.
I was in Taiwan. From Taiwan, I spent a month in, where was first? India, then another month in China, back to Taiwan for a bit. And then I was in Thailand, back to Taiwan, back to India, and then Australia, and then back to Taiwan. That was
Australia. I would love to do Australia, but reptiles and bugs,
dude, that's not a real thing. Because like,
there's creatures on the island that are just crazy terrifying.
Well, that's okay. So I
hate snakes, and like every snake there that bites you, you die.
Right. Yeah. Well, I guess the thing is, it's just like,
and spiders are as big as my laptop. Like, no, thank you.
I guess what they'll say is like, those things don't. Yeah, they exist, but like, they don't come into the city. Like, how often do you deal with snakes in Philly? And most of
there's some asshole neighbor who has an apartment full of them.
Sure, yeah, you're right. But that guy's just an asshole, so he's gonna do whatever assholes do anyways. But no, so yeah, that was a lot of my traveling. I really loved India. I would go back to India.
If I found out my neighbor, literally an attached neighbor, had an entire room dedicated to the most poisonous snakes, I would fucking move.
Yeah,
I'd call the cops on her. Get them out of there. Because if they get loose and somehow make their way over, I will die of a heart attack.
Yeah. They won't even. It doesn't even matter if they're poisonous. You're just going to die from that heart attack.
I'm not educated enough on creatures and animals and bugs to know, like, if I get bit. My whole life, I thought you could suck venom out. That's not even a real thing. So I'd have been there sucking my arm and spitting it out.
And that's how you die.
And I would have been dead.
They would have found you just...
His mouth was full of poison. This idiot thought you could suck it out.
And now he's just swallowing it, and he died quicker.
And it's weird. He had pee on his arm. I thought that's for jellyfish, but that's not even a real thing either.
Isn't it? I almost did that for somebody one time. Thank God I didn't then, I guess.
It would be funny if you did.
Yeah,
I heard pee doesn't work, but I'm never going to tell someone that. Like, if I don't know if my wife's in there, but if she stepped on a jellyfish, I'd pee on her just because it's going to help. I know it's not going to, but
okay, well, let's not tell that story. We'll say that for another time. But I almost had to pee on someone because of homework I had. Like, when I was in Bible school, we had to do practical applications of the Bible verses we read, which is a good thing to do. And one of them was like helping out those in need. So like, you get to give like just generic whatever you can think of helping someone.
You're already making the Bible so much more fun.
Yeah,
that you're helping someone and you're doing Bible homework and it involved peeing on them. So continue.
So like, for me, I'm like, we had this group trip to the beach planned, and I'm like, all right, so the practical application will be is if we go to the beach and someone gets stung by a jellyfish, I will pee on them.
Yes.
And someone did get stung by a jellyfish, and I'm like, dude, this is, of God.
Yeah.
I thought of this
God
thing.
wants you to see my dick.
Right. God wants me to pee on you right now. And he just wouldn't do it. And then, like, hindsight, that's fine. I wouldn't want anyone to... I don't know. I don't want anybody to pee on me, but I'm a man that lives for stories.
Yeah.
So it's like, if I get stung by a jellyfish and you have to pee on me...
I've shared urine a toilet with 3 other people, like just because we thought it was funny. Like
it's fine.
I'm comfortable with my sexuality.
I'm comfortable with your sexuality as well.
Yeah, I've seen a penis before. Who cares if it's my buddies?
I see. That's what I'm saying. Okay, so maybe this is
like you're not gonna look.
This is supposed to go.
You're not gonna look down and go, "Oh my God, I see his dick. I'm gay now." That's not how it works.
I had this thing with my best friend for the longest time that we weren't really best friends because I never saw his dick. He'd seen mine, but I'm like, I'd never seen yours.
That's a true statement.
I totally agree, and he doesn't. He's like, no, man, that's it's whatever. But I'm like, nah, dude. If you're true buddies with somebody, maybe I just had a weird upbringing with bad friends, but like. I don't know. I never. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. Anyway, so the book. So I was saying how your story kind of you've taken your poetry from, and I think it's kind of cool that you've taken poetry from all ages. So some of your stuff you'd be like, oh man, that's probably not a good one, but it fits this story and it fits my narrative. So I used it because some people would be like, I gotta just bring my A game, and you're like, no, this actually fits because that's why when I kind of read it, I was like, oh, and I kind of knew a little bit of your travel story because. A lot of people don't realize this is when I do these interviews, I kind of ignore the person until it's,
I totally understand that,
and I don't think a lot of people do, and I should probably say this if hopefully someone listens to the 2 hour and 30-minute mark, that I'm not igging you because I don't like you or I'm not interested in you. Is I like to learn about here. Like if you look right here, I have no notes. This is all off the cuff. This is just general conversation building. So when you sent me the book, which I was very thankful you did, and I read some of it, but my phone just sucks, and I hate zoom in. So I was like, oh, but I got the general gist of like, oh, you were leaving the area, you went traveling, and then you returned back home in it with a completely different state of mind. Yeah. And you can see in your poetry because you didn't say, oh, well, I'm going to only take my A game. I'm going to take the poetry that fits that scenario, which I think is a cool thing, and it's a
And I definitely added poetry or poems to both sections of the book, even though I started writing this years after the To Leave section really began. But it was like I know how I was feeling in that season. I feel like this poem that I have either recently. I mean, I wrote a decent amount for the book. Probably at least 20% of the book is original poems just for it. A lot of it was like just laying around. And one of the reasons that I did this, and I think it's important to say this on this podcast, is that I did this because I wanted other people to know that they could do it too. This is a 50-page book. It's maybe has 30 poems in it.
It's got pictures.
Yeah, it's got pictures. It's so it's nothing. It's great. It's one of the like crown achievements of my life. But anybody could do it if they really tried to do it. And I know so many talented people. And
that just sit on their hands.
Yeah, and I'm just like, come on, guys! Like you've heard from me. I don't think anything I do is good.
Yeah.
But I put out albums. I put out books because I'm like, this is what I want to do, and I, some level, enjoy doing these things. People seem to respond to it pretty well, so I'm going to keep putting this forward, and hopefully it works out. That's why it's hard for me to answer this question because I don't want to wake up one day a rock star. I don't want to wake up one day, super duper famous. Hopefully what I can do is just change somebody, and let them know that their life is inherently valuable. And there's this, if we can just leave the podcast with anything, there's this brilliant quote, and I know I'm going to butcher it, but it's one of the things that I really I hold on to and let it give me comfort when it needs to. It's this quote by a Sufi mystic. Sufi is like an Islamic mystic, and the quote is, "Know, O beloved, that man was not made in jest or at random, but for some great purpose and some glorious end." And I hold on to that, and being like, I believe that that's true for me. I believe that's true for you. I believe it's true for everybody watching. That we all have a role to play here. That none of this is on accident. And we're trying to do our best. And the forces that be, hopefully they're on our side. Hopefully we can learn to walk with them properly. But I just, especially coming from this area where there's just so much hopelessness. And just so much just like, I'm stuck here. And just being like, I didn't come from a rich family. Almost all of my traveling that I did at least back in the States was done off of my own wallet. Like, I put out this book. I had started a GoFundMe, and a lot of really great people gave towards it, and it exists, and you can too. Like you too.
Where can people find the book or purchase it?
I would recommend either going to Pressed, because I have it on sale there, or just coming to any of my shows or hitting up me personally about it. You can get it online. I'm working on getting it on Amazon. It's on lulu.com. That's where I got it made from. But it's super expensive on there because of just the shipping and all that other stuff. So I would just say come get it to me.
What if someone says, I want to go to Press tomorrow, what crisp dollar bill do they need to bring?
It's $10.
Not bad.
Yeah, so that's what I do. It cost me, after getting it printed, because there's pictures in it, because it's not just like text, it's pretty expensive. So after shipping, it's like $8 per book. So I maybe make 2. Yeah. And again, I don't do this because I want to make money. I do this because art's in me and it wants to get out.
Yeah, 100%.
So so that would be a great way to do it. I am working on like an ebook, and I wanted to do an audiobook, but that's just a pain in the ass. I'm having a really hard time with that, but hopefully I'll get that out eventually.
Yeah,
100%. So and actually, if we're plugging things, we're doing a poetry night at Pressed on July, I should know this, 12th.
July 12th.
July 12th. And so it's an open mic, but there's also some individuals who have said that they're going to be there and be featured acts, and I'm one of them, and some friends of mine. So if you're a poet yourself and you're looking for a place to promote your stuff, to try, giving it a go, just hit me up personally or message us on the Pressed website. We'll get you there and we'll make sure that you can do it. But yeah, it's something that's happening.
Awesome.
Yeah.
One of these days when I get the equipment I want, and it's easier for me to travel, because I know Press the corner is nice size, but probably not podcast size. But if I had my other stuff, I'd be a lot more better. But one day we'll do something live at the
absolutely. I know that all of us would love that. And
yeah,
we're all down with that.
I'll start coming by more and seeing some events, and then I can plug them on here and talk about them more.
Yeah, hit me up whenever you're there, because I live above it. I don't know if I want to put that on the internet, but now you know where I live.
Yeah, you can throw pebbles at it.
Yeah.
Come on out.
Yeah, I get that all the time. It's really cool, because then it's like my friends just come to me to some degree, you know, like getting a Snapchat from a buddy and just being like, hey, I'm downstairs, and then it's like, all right, I'll go put on pants and come down and say hi, you know?
The only thing I got to plug that I want to talk about real quick is, this interview will air, it's going to air on Friday at 12, so it'll be on YouTube. I'll probably put the audio out a day early, because I kind of like putting out, just teasing it.
Sure.
And this way it kind of gets some traffic to the audio and then to the video. But my friends from Murder My Dude are, he goes by Jackson Wells on the show. I don't know. If you do enough research, you can find his real name. But Jackson Wells from Murder My Dude is a huge fan of Press Coffee. He goes in all the time. He hangs out.
Yeah.
Really cool dude. Check out his podcast. It's a local thing. I love it. I think it's cool.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
They just did... I was listening to the Coffee Press... they did a coffee shop episode. They talked about just weird murders that had to relate to coffee shops, which were still fascinating. And then they just wrapped up their episode that was Pride Month episode. So once again, it is murder and death, but they do it in they make it not so much light. The Pride one's not light. It does talk about people who were legit murdered because of what their sexuality was, which is super sad, but it still brings out awareness and says this is why Pride Month exists.
Right, and why it's important.
Yes, exactly. So shout out to those guys. Next interview that we'll be doing I'm super excited for, Haley Stokes.
Okay.
She is a local artist. She's starting her own comic book.
Oh, really?
She does all of the art for the band Look Alive.
Yeah.
So
okay.
The eyeballs.
Right,
yeah, the eyeballs that you see for Look Alive and the zombie girl.
Yeah.
Is all done by her.
Wow. That's great.
Dude, she's unreal. And there's her little plug for interviews.
Nice.
Yeah, adorable. But yeah, she's super.
Wow.
Honestly, I can see that in a Marvel book.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's one she just did where she did a tribute to another artist, and the artist, I think it's this one. So this is the actual artist's version, and they said, hey, if you can draw this character but in your style but use the same things, and that's her version. That's sick.
Yeah, that's
so I'm
cool.
really excited to sit down with her and the guy who's going to help her write and do the comic. So that's going to be next episode, and that'll air next Friday.
Nice.
But a lot of cool stuff, man, and we got to do this again.
Absolutely, man.
Like I said, things that weren't cool in high school, we do talk TVs, music, comic books, movies, television, everything in between. But we do like to plug local stuff that's in the business. So if you have something going on at Press that you want to come on and promote, let me know. That's every Thursday night. So the Thursday before, just hit me up like, hey, do you have an open spot? And we'll get you on and we'll talk about it.
Awesome, man.
If you guys are interested in something cool, the Majestic Theater in Pottsville, this Tuesday, I'll be having a meeting for Skookstock, which I've talked about plenty on here. If you want tickets for Skookstock, 8 Lawson bands. It's on Facebook. Just search it, Skookstock, like Woodstock, but Skook. The Majestic Theater is doing. They're going to show 16 Candles.
Oh wow,
in downtown
that's
Pottsville.
pretty cool.
So if that's an awesome movie.
Yeah,
and if you
did
the Breakfast Club.
Ferris Bueller a couple weeks ago. Oh, and yeah, you're right. Breakfast
They did
Club.
The Warriors.
Wow.
Like every movie they put on there is like
80
all my
ones.
favorite movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff in Pottsville. Just go look for it. We have a movie
absolutely.
theater that's showing old school movies.
Yeah.
Like I wish I would have seen every one of those movies just to say I've seen them in a movie theater setting again.
Yeah.
Because it'd been fun.
Yeah. And I guess I would just say, if you want to check me out or anything, I'm about Churches and Trains is my Facebook page.
Yeah, I'll have that in the link in the description below as well.
Yeah, so just click on that. There's an ampersand in it. That's always screws with people because they type out Churches and Train instead of Churches weird symbol train.
Yeah.
But I don't like to be found easily, apparently. Because I don't know if you knew this, I used to go as Timmy Mengle, but I would spell Timmy Timmy. Yeah. So, like, whenever I would play a show, I'd be like, my name's Timmy Mengle, blah, 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 blah. But then, like, no one would ever find me because my name was spelled wrong.
Yeah.
But
live and learn.
Yeah. And then I go and put an ampersand in it and make it even harder. But, so find me there. And, I'm going on tour in August from August 9th till the 18th with Tyler Troutman of Condition Oakland. We're working on that at the moment.
I've heard a lot of good things about that band.
Tyler's...
It's a band, right? Condition Oakland?
Okay, so Condition Oakland is a band, but it originally started as just an individual guy, Tyler Troutman.
Really?
And he's like the fourth figure of that whole project. So there's been
I'm the face of Interviews, Banging Beers, but I have people that are on it. It's
and so he's cycled through like several different bands and whatnot, and he just actually started it's still Condition Oakland, but got new band members and everything.
That's such a cool name too.
Yeah,
it sounds super punk rock.
It really does. And dude, okay, so this is actually like really funny. I played a house show with Tyler years ago, and I was so intimidated because he was this big figure in the DIY scene, and like, this guy that's just been doing it forever.
Is he from around here?
Mm-hmm. He's from Ashland.
Okay.
Yeah. So you got to have him on. He's really good friends with Ted Hazard, who
I just had Ted.
Yeah.
He was so self-conscious. He's like, I hope I did really good. I'm like, I was fun, man.
Yeah. Well, that's just Teddy.
Yeah.
But I love Ted as well.
Yeah.
Tyler, he took me on my first tour a couple years ago, back in 2016. And we're going at it again. He's like one of my favorite buddies to do anything with.
Yeah, send him over. Tell him you'll contact this guy.
Absolutely. But yeah, thanks for having me so much, man.
What did you think of your experience? You have fun?
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing like... I can't even remember if I said this in the pod. I think I did.
Yeah.
We talked about it a lot. But it's just nice to find someone who actually wants to just talk about things. Did
it live up to the expectations? You said you were excited?
Yeah, absolutely.
We nailed it?
Yeah. I guess I try not to have a lot of expectations going into things. I just kind of want things to be whatever they are, because expectations are false theories about the future or whatever, So it's just like, well, whatever this is going to be whatever it is, and it was great.
Yeah, I had a blast.
Yeah.
A really good conversation.
I want to shake your hand, but I feel like I'm not going to do that because we talked
earlier.
on
camera, like this is the handshake. Thank you. Buy his book, Coffee Press. Thank you so much, man, for hanging out.
No problem.
That'll wrap it up for Interviews Everyday People. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. You didn't quite beat the record. I think Courtney still has it.
Yeah, I'll have to come back and dethrone her.
It's going to be hard. She's amazing. But thank you once again, man, and go check him out. All the links in the description will be below. We'll have the Press Coffee on there. We'll have his personal page, music page, the whole nine. Check it all out below. Go support some local stuff, and let's have some fun. And come hang out, and you'll see me there as well. Yep. See you later, guys. Yeah, that was awesome, man.
Good stuff. Oh.